6 a.m. in the Mile High City. Good morning, Denver, Colorado, on this Wednesday, August 7th, 2024. You tuned into the Jeff and Bill Show on 710 KNUS. I'm your co-host, Jeff Hunt, along with the Honorable Billy Thorpe, bringing you the freshest insights and hottest takes from the right, left, and center. Sometimes it gets a little crazy too, but it's a beautiful day in the greatest country in history. We're gearing up for a whole nother morning of engaging discussions, critical analysis, and most importantly, your calls and texts, because this is where Denver's voice is heard loud and clear. So get that coffee brewing, Denver, and let's dive into the issues that matter most to you right here, right now. Today, it is all Tim Walz. Tim Walz. How did he get to where he got as the pick for Kamala Harris? We're going to dive into what Nancy Pelosi had to do with this decision. And then how did Josh Shapiro, the governor of Pennsylvania, lose out on this opportunity? If you watch the speeches yesterday, you thought to yourself, man, this is a dynamic guy. He'd be a great leader just in his own natural with his own natural charisma and speaking ability and all that stuff. So why didn't he win? We'll cover that as well. Jessie Jane Duff, Gunnery Sergeant and Executive Director of Veterans for Trump's going to join us. And then Greg Lopez, Congressman from Congressional District 4, will join us later in the show in the 9 o'clock hour as well. And then James Varney with Real Clear Politics, an investigator, is looking at a growing sexual abuse scandal. Think back to what happened in kind of the church. Think back to what happened with Boy Scouts. Well, it could be much bigger with public education. We're going to dive into those details with a new investigative report coming from Real Clear Politics. James Varney joining us in the 8 o'clock hour. So a lot of news to cover today. You're going to want to stick with us. Speaking of the news, let's check in on those news items with Blake Olson. Good morning, Blake.
Good morning, Jeff. Appreciate it. And Billy, beautiful morning, 67 and clear as the sun rises. Expecting a high of 95 today. The 710 5-day forecast is coming up. Our top story.
To her credit, Kamala Harris and Tim Walz do make an interesting team, because if we remember the rioting in the summer of 2020, Tim Walz was the guy who let rioters burn down Minneapolis, and then Kamala Harris was the one who bailed the rioters out of jail. So there's an interesting team in that sense.
J.D. Vance, he's in Michigan today, and so is presidential candidate Kamala Harris with her new radical running mate, Tim Walz. Harris will meet with the United Auto Workers in Detroit. She still hasn't taken questions from the press, and it's been 16 days.
That's 16 days.
Walz is so radical, he signed a bill into law requiring schools to stock tampons in boys' bathrooms. Signed legislation allowing minors, kids, to receive sex change operations without their parents' permission, allowed the Twin Cities to burn for at least 4 days during the summer of hell in 2020, denying a request by the mayor for the National Guard. And his wife, she's a Marxist nut as well. She says, you do the crime, you don't do the time.
I think it takes a lot of imagination and courage to move away from a system that punishes people and sets people up for failure, to a system that is restorative, right? That is equitable.
Yeah.
That is healing. How many chances do you get? My answer to that is as many chances as you need. My answer to that is as many chances as you need, which doesn't really please those law and order people.
Yeah.
Bottom line, Tim Walz is a great socialist.
We can get out there, reach out, make the case. And for one thing, don't ever shy away from our progressive values. One person's socialism is another person's neighborliness. Just do the damn work.
It's a beautiful day in this neighborhood, a beautiful day for a neighbor. Would you be mine?
Former President Trump says he'll take part in an interview with Elon Musk. Trump said the interview will take place Monday night. He added that more details will be announced later. The billionaire owner of X endorsed Trump following last month's assassination attempt. Frontier Airlines confirming that one of its pilots was arrested before his flight was due to take off. Houston police arrested pilot Seymour Walker on an assault family violence warrant on August 1st at George Bush International. Officers boarded flight 3195 to DFW, and Walker was taken into custody without incident before passengers began boarding the plane. The Colorado-based airline said passengers were given the options of full refund to flight credits and much more. A federal appeals court is upholding a Maryland ban on assault rifles. The U.S. Court of Appeals for the Fourth Circuit ruled on Tuesday that the ban did not violate the Second Amendment's right to bear arms because semi-automatic rifles like the AR-15 are military-style weapons designed for sustained combat operations. There have been no reports so far of injuries or major damage after a magnitude 5.2 earthquake in Kern County, California. The earthquake hit just after 9 o'clock Pacific time and was centered about 30 miles from Bakersfield. News brought to you by Lair Fireplace and Patio, Denver's premier source for everything fireplace, patio, and grills, locally owned and operated since 1954, online at lairfireplacepatio.com. Team USA men's basketball demolished Brazil 122-87 to advance to the semifinal round at the Paris Olympics. They take on Nikola Jokic and Serbia on Thursday. And most college football teams are into day 5 or 6 by now, so they can hit. Nothing like a beautiful summer day, 97 degrees on the field turf under blue skies for teams like the UNC Bears. 65 in Parker, 64 in Westminster, 67 in Denver. Jeff and Bill continue. It's Hump Day. Blake Olson, News Talk 710 KNUS.
One more hot day, then we're going to cool off. We'll hit the mid to upper 90s today. Afternoon and evening showers and thunderstorms, a good bet. Lingering into tonight, lows near 60. Much cooler, only low 70s with showers and thunderstorms likely Thursday and Thursday night. Highs will only be 70s with showers and thunderstorms Friday. 70s and low 80s for Saturday, more showers and storms. Weather sponsored by branchplanning.com. Secure your future retirement with a reliable income stream. Annuities can provide guaranteed payments, giving you peace of mind. Get your complimentary review at branchplanning.com or call 720-651-9800. Meteorologist Don Day in the 710 KNUS Weather Center.
Billy, this is a great song to just kind of get you going in the morning here, isn't
Such
it?
a good song. Kind of
This
eases
is
into
a
it a little bit.
Wednesday morning. Yes, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of easing into it, if you were like many Americans yesterday when Kamala Harris picked her vice presidential pick, Tim Walz, you went, who? In fact, about 73% of Americans don't know who this guy is. So is that going to play well for him? Is this an opportunity for the Democrats to be able to define him before everybody else gets a sense of, their feelings and perspectives on this guy? Or is this going to be bad for them on name ID? I think it's going to be worse on them for name ID than the opportunity to define them. I don't know what you think, Billy, on this, but I think most Americans yesterday went, who is this guy? And they're willing to maybe give him a look, but with so many of our voters being kind of low information voters. And when I say that, I'm talking about those people that you see when they do the man on the street and they're like, who or how many branches of government do we have? And they're like 15. Well, no.
Yeah.
For those people, they may look at Walz and go, Harris Walz. By the way, every time I see his name, I'm reminded that Harris didn't build a wall. When I was watching the little kind of coming out party yesterday and seeing all the Harris Walz signs, I'm like, oh boy, that just reminds me of her failures.
Yeah, but I'm not sure that resonates with the larger voting population. I'm not sure that's a voting issue, that the larger voting population is like, ooh, Trump didn't build that wall. And if it is the idea that
Harris didn't.
Yeah, I know, but Harris didn't promise to. And that's why that idea might boomerang, because there was only one candidate in this race that was promising to build something and didn't. Harris never wanted to build the wall. The thing for me is I want Tim Walz. Okay, if they're not reaching out to the German band Accept, and getting their one and only hits, that's a huge missed opportunity. And I'm not
okay. You got to bridge the gap for me there, buddy.
Okay, except they have got, it's a rocker. It's really good, but the name of the song is "Balls to the Wall." So if you're not going out and getting that, you really should. You really should. I just think that'd be fun for them. I think the absence of name ID could be, and I'm not saying could be beneficial, only because the vast majority of Americans don't know who the current vice president is, even though she's running for president. And so the idea of not knowing the Veep, I don't think is necessarily a bad thing. I think it gives the opportunity for both sides to define who he is. And we'll see who wins that race and what seems to stick. Because even what's being said right now may not be the actual impression, a month from now or 2 months from now about what voters have about Tim Walz. I was really curious. I had no idea about him yesterday. And so I had a busy day yesterday. I had about 90 minutes of downtime total. And I spent some time going back and trying to find speeches, looking at campaign ads, looking at things that he had done. What I'm trying to figure out is, who is he? And I'm specifically looking for things where he's talking. He's giving campaign speeches, he's doing campaign ads, or he's speaking in front of the legislature, stuff like that. And I went, oh, I get it now. I think I see the strategy that I did not see yesterday. Tim Walz has big dad energy. He's basically like everybody's friendly dad. That's how he comes across. He is incredibly personal. The thing that I came away with after yesterday, again, it's only 90 minutes. I don't know him intimately, and I'm not talking about his politics. I'm talking about presentation.
Just the vibe.
He is the best orator of all four of them. And it's not
really.
It's not even close. And the reason being, I'm not saying he's best as far, the speaker. What I'm talking is he is the most authentic. He comes across as being the most genuine. And I get it because I'd seen one poll talking about the pick of J.D. Vance, and voters that did not identify as current Donald Trump Republican voters in that group. The thing they said about J.D. Vance is that he was inauthentic. He came across like a poser. He came across as someone who was telling them something he thought they needed. It was the idea of that kid in school that was always telling you what he thought you think you wanted to hear. And he was very inauthentic. And if that's what the Harris campaign is thinking with J.D. Vance, Tim Walz makes all the sense in the world, because he comes across like everybody's favorite friendly grandfather or dad. That's just the energy he's got. Also, some of his backstory, after I was reading into it, counters a little bit of what I thought was going to be the strong story for J.D. Vance, one of which being military service. And Walz has got more military service, and that could be an issue because J.D. Vance talked about 4 years in the Marines. Walz has got 20 years plus in the National Guard. So length of service, again, Guard, and friend of the show, George Brockler, will talk nasty things about the Guard sometimes when they're not around, but they, just in fun, just poking fun at them. But again, 20 years versus 4 does, put a little bit of a salve over the fact that it was Guard versus, the in-service stuff. The other part, and he was deployed a couple of times, the other part is that in the narrative, both of them come out of the military, or at least use the military. Walz is still in it at the time, and use the military to get educated. J.D. Vance chooses Yale, graduates from Yale, goes and lives in San Francisco, the liberal hellhole, and becomes a venture capitalist, where Tim Walz uses the GI Bill to go to school, become a teacher, go to a small community in Minnesota, eventually become Minnesota's Teacher of the Year and the school's head football coach, where he leads the team to a state championship. That's a different narrative. And if you talk about voters, who are they going to identify with most? Who's going to be able to speak at their level the most? I'm putting my money on the Teacher of the Year and the head football coach versus venture capitalist dude that wrote a book and had a movie about him. I think that's going to be a better. And so that's why I see the strategy. I had no idea what it was yesterday. After spending about an hour and a half looking at his speeches and stuff, I'm like, oh, I get it. I can see the strategy now.
Is it enough to cover up Kamala Harris's lack of appeal and Donald Trump's appeal to especially Midwestern voters? I'd love to hear from you all. Give us a call, 303-696-1971, 303-696-1971, or text us on the 710 KNUS app. Billy, I appreciate your perspective, but the vibes that came across from me were Tim Kaine vibes. If you remember him, he was the vice presidential pick for Hillary Clinton in 2016. I mean, obviously, you have to be an accomplished person to get that far in politics, but this guy's had a career this long. 73% of Americans have no idea who he is. And they're just going to kind of whistle at him as history just moves right on by. Kamala Harris, too extreme, too San Francisco. Tim Walz negatives around his treatment around George Floyd and Minneapolis and tampons and boys' bathrooms and all that stuff. It just is going to get flushed out. And I don't think it's enough. Everything you said, Billy, there's nothing wrong with what you said or factually inaccurate, but to cover up kind of the progressive leanings and progressive policies of both him and Kamala Harris in order to pull voters away from Donald Trump in the Midwest and those kind of key states of Michigan, Wisconsin, and Minnesota. I don't know. I'm not sure I see it, but I'd love to hear from people. 303-696-1971. Text messages starting to pour in here. Joan from Lakewood. Walz is your slimy uncle who you wouldn't leave alone with your son. I don't know, Joan. I don't know. That seems like is there anything in his past that would...
Leaving Walz alone with your son?
Yeah. That would make you believe that Walz is slimy?
The teacher and the head football coach?
Right.
Again, you're going to have to help me square the circle. I don't have any idea what you're referencing as far as why not. What would be the issue? I can't figure it out. But we do have Monica on the phone. I was going to text you, Jeff, but we've got Monica waiting to talk.
Let's do it.
Yeah, she disagrees with me, so this could be interesting.
Monica, you're on the Jeff and Bill show.
Yeah,
good morning.
Good morning, guys. I just woke up. I'm still pretty sleepy. Just heard Billy talking about the difference between Vance and Walz, and I haven't done a lot of research or anything, but what Billy was saying about Walz being an orator, let me tell you, yesterday, when I was at the gym watching Fox News, there was a coverage of J.D. Vance at a rally in Pennsylvania. And it turned into basically a Q&A. I don't remember if it was reporters or whom, but J.D. Vance was unbelievably articulate, factual. He did not do any kind of personal attacks. He had stats about Kamala, about border crossers, about what Kamala did or didn't do with the border. He was very articulate, very much of a presence, very presidential, did not back down from any questions. And then when I came home and did a little research on this Walz guy, he's pretty scary with extreme liberal positions on tampons in boys' bathrooms. Don't consider socialism a bad thing. Consider it being neighborly. And also the military situation that Billy was just talking about with J.D. Vance and Walz. There is, I haven't researched it completely, but there is a little bit of information about when Walz stepped out of the National Guard. And, you know, when his group was supposed to go to Iraq, supposedly Walz just kind of said, I'm not going. And that was it. So if we do some research and if they bring these things out about Walz, and if you see J.D. Vance, oh my gosh, his presence, he almost is reminiscent of a young Kennedy.
Now,
so
I understand what you're saying, Monica.
Much...
What about and again, it's only one poll. What about the one poll that I saw that said people that are not in the MAGA Donald Trump tent found J.D. Vance to be inauthentic? What about that poll?
I don't, after seeing him yesterday, I mean, frankly, that was the first time that I saw J.D. Vance speak. Yeah. But after seeing him yesterday, he did not seem unauthentic to me. And
now here's the question. Here's the question though. Before listening to J.D. Vance, would you count yourself in the pool of Donald Trump likely voters, undecided, or Kamala Harris, Joe Biden likely voters? Where would you sit beforehand?
I will admit I'm a registered Republican and I vote a Republican ticket.
Okay,
I'm not voting for Donald Trump. I'm voting for the Republican platform.
So you would be inside of the group that would be outside of the poll. You would not be counted in the poll that I'm referencing. I'm talking about people that are needed to be persuadable, the people that Donald Trump is going to need to get across the line. And again, it is a single poll. So I'm not going to say this is what everybody absolutely feels, but I think it's an interesting point of conversation. I'm not saying that Moses came down from Mount Sinai with tablets that said J.D. Vance is inauthentic. I'm just saying in this one group that asked this series of questions, he came across that way. And then I watched Walz yesterday, and he comes across, regardless of whether or not you believe the stuff coming out of his mouth. I'm just talking about presentation. His presentation is really, really good based on getting trust and connecting with the audience. I think that's where Kamala liked him. I think that's part of the reason that he rose up to the top. And
Billy, to your point, it did come down to a set of personal interviews.
Yeah.
So she spent time with both of them. And look, when you're kind of in that position that she is, where you got to pick somebody that you're going to essentially be married to for 4 years, at least possibly 8 years, you're going to want to have a personal rapport. And my sense reading the Wall Street Journal coverage on why she went with Walz as opposed to Shapiro, and I think there's actually a Jewish kind of element figuring into that as well. But it seemed like a lot of the reason that the people close to her are saying is because of that personal rapport they had between the two of them.
Yeah, vibes. Yeah, they had good vibes. Yeah, and I'm not sure that's the best way to do it, but I guess if she wants the vibes.
But look, it's like a marriage, man. You're going to be together for
that's
true. Longer than a lot of marriages in America.
Yeah, that's
true.
Monica,
I appreciate the call. Thanks so much.
And good morning.
Monica's
Thanks
line will be open 303-696-1971. I love the fact that Monica woke up and was like, I'm calling these dudes.
It's fantastic. That's really
Billy,
cool.
she had some thoughts for you.
I appreciate it.
Right up out of the morning.
And I appreciate her perspective on what she's hearing and her connection with J.D. Vance, because I think that's really important, because I think some of the, I would say, squishy voters are going to be somewhat persuaded by speech-making skills. I think that was a strength for Biden. I think it was a strength for Bill Clinton. I think that George Bush could do it, but didn't pull it off all the time. Reagan was phenomenal. And I think that can be a huge plus. And I think that it's a huge negative for Biden. I think as he aged, when we saw him up there in any kind of an interview. You saw how difficult it was, not just the stutter, but just in general. He is not a strong orator. And I know that people disagree with me. I think Donald Trump's not a good orator either. I do not think he is a very good speaker. Personally, I understand
when he
why
goes
people like him,
for
but
90 minutes.
Oh, I know, but
There's moments
endurance
when
doesn't
he's good,
qualify.
but sometimes it just meanders.
Yeah.
Look, I want to talk to you about my good friend, Dr. Mike at Rocky Mountain Dental Group. With all the work I've had done with my teeth, believe me, finding a good dentist makes all the difference. And Dr. Mike is a fantastic guy. He helps people like you and me look and feel amazing by providing the best dental care available. See for yourself all the 5-star reviews at RockyMountainDentalGroup.com. Here's one. I've been going there for over 20 years. Dr. Mike and his entire staff are outstanding. I like the fact that the same person always cleans my teeth. If you need an awesome dentist, Dr. Mike is your guy. If your gums are receding, look, that happens, especially if you get braces later in life. It's critical to address this issue promptly. Dr. Mike is a top-tier expert in the Chow pinhole surgical technique. This method requires no cutting, no sutures, and virtually no downtime. The procedure involves making a small hole in the tissue and gently repositioning of the gums. Schedule a free consultation with Dr. Mike to discover all the benefits of this revolutionary procedure. Call 303-233-1335 or visit RockyMountainDentalGroup.com. That's RockyMountainDentalGroup.com for your free consultation today. Dr. Mike swings by the studio, and this guy is a really, speaking of personable, Billy, really personable dentist. Which
good.
You want that type of care.
Yes,
So
you do.
Politico had a fascinating article yesterday about how we got here with Walz. House Democrats have often chafed at President Joe Biden's favoritism for the Senate. So when they pushed Tim Walz for vice president, they had more than ideology on their minds. They wanted one of their own. House Democrats have grumbled for years that Biden doesn't really understand their chamber, a complaint compounded by the fact that Vice President Kamala Harris was also a former senator. Even while Democrat lawmakers are happy to pass major legislative priorities like the infrastructure law and the Inflation Reduction Act, during Biden's tenure, the process often left them feeling run over. So some House Democrats privately lobbied Harris to pick Walz, wanting to see someone on the ticket who truly understood the so-called lower chamber, while other candidates like Governor Josh Shapiro and Senator Mark Kelly also had some House Democrat backers. Many of them saw Walz, who served 12 years in the House and counts strong allies among both centrists and progressives, as a potentially perfect fit. And Nancy Pelosi was one of the big names behind it. I mean, this, you know what this reminds me of, Bill, is when Barack Obama went with Joe Biden. So he had someone with strong connections to the legislative branch. And so that was part of I thought that was really interesting, part of their discussion.
Yeah, I think that is. And I also think that, and again, Kamala can be rationalizing this, but, and I'm just completely talking out of not the top orifice of my body, the ones below my waist. I'm just letting you know this. I have nothing to back this up. I'm wondering if Kamala thinks that Shapiro can still deliver Pennsylvania without being on the ticket. Can she come to him and say, you are basically my version of Democrat Pennsylvania Special Forces. You are going to barnstorm this state for me, and you're going to push. And rather than run around with Kamala, I would have him run around with Walz. And that's the team that I would be putting up in front of a lot of these persuadable communities. And Shapiro would know which ones to target. I'm just curious. If that's the plan, then I think Walz makes sense. If Shapiro ends up being more left out in the cold and he's not doing stuff, especially in Pennsylvania and elsewhere in the Midwest, then Republicans need to start cheering, because that, for me, is an enormous mistake. An enormous mistake. It should be, Shapiro should be almost never in office or in the governor's mansion. He should be out on the road from now through election day if I'm a Democrat strategist, and try to have him deliver the state that way. And you put Tim Walz standing right next to him and say, this dude's just like me. That's what I do.
When I was watching the rally yesterday
Yeah.
and watching Shapiro speak, a few things came to mind. One,
Yeah.
I'm still of the mindset that maybe the top Democrats like Jared Polis, Shapiro, Newsom that could win are looking at the tea leaves and going, I'm going to sit this one out because I don't want to lose against Donald Trump and then have my political career at the very end.
Oh,
And
you know,
so there's part of me.
There's something very intelligent there. There's something very, very intelligent with that, because think about this. Okay. We're going to play. Let's pretend you and I are going to pretend that we are Shapiro and we have been passed over or not in the Veep, or maybe we kind of say, no. I'm not. You like Walz. Okay. And you back away a little bit and you say, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to work as hard as I can for you from now until election. I am going to be out there and I'm going to do everything I can.
Yep.
And then if you're a winner, if it's a win, you're like, look what I did. I helped you. Woo, high five, everybody. And if they didn't, you're like, oh, I'm sorry. I worked as hard as I can now. Oh, my turn next time. I think for Shapiro, it's a win-win. If Kamala wins, he's the good soldier. If Kamala loses, he's the next natural choice. For Shapiro, this Walz pick for me is a win-win.
That is a good point. And then also watching Shapiro speak, that dude would outshine Kamala Harris
Agreed.
on the stage, and I don't think she likes that.
Agreed.
And look, if you were the president and you had your VP and everybody loved the VP and everybody's wearing the VP t-shirts talking about how great the VP's speaking abilities are, and you're kind of getting shafted a little bit over there, you may not like that, and that may put some fractures in the marriage, so to speak. So anyways,
I had something in my throat there. I apologize. Sorry.
We'll continue this conversation. We can get to the phone lines. Give us a call, 303-696-1971. What do you think Walz's strengths and weaknesses are? We'll get into that and more. You're listening to the Jeff and Bill Show.
News Talk 710 KNUS.
So there's a lot developing around Tim Walz and his military experience. The New York Post reporting that Tim Walz is a, quote, a coward and traitor, unquote, for retiring from the military before heading out to Iraq, says the guardsman who had to replace him and go serve when Minnesota Governor Tim Walz chose to leave the military on the eve of his deployment to Iraq. Thomas Behrens went in his place. I needed to hit the ground running and take care of the troops and tell them we were going to war, Behrens said of the 500 soldiers under his command. For a guy in that position to quit is cowardice, basically making the claim that Tim Walz knew we were heading out to war and then decided to retire at that point. Now, part of his promotion...
I cannot wait to hear what Cadet Bone Spurs has to say about this. Cannot wait to hear what Mr. Medical Deferments has to toss it.
Oh, Donald Trump.
Yep, that's what I want to know.
Was it Bone Spurs?
Yes, it was. Yes, Cadet Bone Spurs said that the little ouchies on his back heels are too painful, and he can't go fight for American values. Too painful. Too painful.
Yeah, but I think in the original
horrible,
context, it was
horrible.
him versus JD Vance, and so
Oh, I know, but this is the problem with the ticket. This is going to be a problem with the ticket when you sit there and say, "Hey, he backed out of Iraq." Okay. What about the guy at the top of the ticket? That's why this, again, Donald Trump, in many ways, Republicans are slowly going to find this out. It's a cursed monkey paw. You guys have wished on a cursed monkey paw.
Now, Walz, though, never did see combat. So to clarify his record in the National Guard, he never actually did see combat and withdrew before he went to Iraq. Okay. And then there'll be questions around whether or not he was promoting himself, because his promotion in the military was based upon him serving a number of more years. He then retired early, so he didn't get the promotion, and then he ran out there saying that he did have that promotion. So there'll be that's where you're going to see the critique on stolen valor and also withdrawing prior to heading Iraq. But getting some text messages on that issue itself. Let's go back to the phone lines. Mary, you're on the Jeff and Bill Show, News Talk 710 KNUS. Good morning, Mary.
Good morning. Oh, she just dropped.
Did she just?
Yeah, she was right there. And then as soon as we went to her, she I even had her on air and everything. So, well, crud. Okay, Mary, call us back. Guess we're going to have to go to Jerry. Yeah.
All right, Jerry, you're up. You're on the Jeff and Bill Show. Good morning, Jerry.
Where is it? It's right there. Okay, hang on, Jerry. Hang on, man. I'm going to try to this one. Okay, let's go over here. Jerry, are you that one? What the heck is going on here? Why are my phone lines not connecting? Here, Jerry, hang on. I'll put you back on hold. Talk amongst yourself for a second here. I got to figure out why is this not. Okay, I got to do something here. I'll be right back.
All right. Billy's going to work on the tech stuff. So, but to provide some clarity around Tim Walz's military service, it's not going to be clear cut for him. And I think Republicans, especially when you have the dude that replaced him, saying that he had real problems with the way he left, the timing that he left, the way he left his troops. They're not going to be able to run out there as easily with JD Vance as they are with Tim Walz.
We've got Mary
to Billy's point.
Yeah, we got Mary back, but
Trump's not perfect on that.
Sorry about that. Didn't mean to.
No,
Mary
that's
back
fine.
and Jerry's gone. Yeah, Jerry should call back in. So I'm sorry, Jerry. Yeah, I disconnected you by accident.
Mary, Wyoming. It's always great to hear from you.
Yeah.
Good morning, Mary.
Hey, good morning.
Oh, I'm so happy that works.
First of all, I got to start by saying having Kamala be the choice, believe me, I was flabbergasted. I did not expect her to get the support that she did.
Oh, yeah?
So there goes my theme about Michelle. So you're right, Billy, that's a one for you.
Oh,
but
you.
I also want to go back and say, I get real frustrated, Billy, that you say that Trump didn't do the wall.
Yeah.
In other words, those majority of the people understand why he didn't do the wall. He couldn't get any support from Congress to build that wall.
Why couldn't he?
On his own side.
Why couldn't he?
Because you have the ones that even right now do not support him. The Ramis,
what was missing though? What was missing? Because there's a reason behind it, Mary.
Support from his own.
I know, but why did
Republicans?
Yeah, but why couldn't they get the support? What was missing? There was a portion of that promise that Trump made.
A wall.
No,
it's the same thing right now. There's a SAVE Act, the one that is asking for the voters to be, to be required to be citizenship.
Yeah.
And the Republicans that put that out, guess who will not support it?
Yeah, here's the problem, though, that in federal elections, the ones they're worried about, you have to be a citizen. So it's a solution that doesn't have a problem. It's window dressing. But the reason that Trump couldn't get support,
proof of citizenship, requiring them to have proof of citizenship,
that's already a law.
You're saying is not a problem?
No, it's already a law.
With 16 million illegals coming in,
I know, but
and you're saying,
Mary,
oh no, none of them can ever be able to vote.
It's already a law. Passing another law that does the same thing isn't going to increase security. We could pass a law. We could pass a law
asking them to provide proof that you are a citizen.
Yeah, and that's what you need to do when you sign up. And when you
we also have a law that says don't come to this country illegally.
I know that, but the issue is, I know, but if we had a law that said don't come to the country illegally, and we passed another law that says don't come to the country illegally, and passed another law that says don't come to the country illegally, would it increase our security? No. We already have a rule that when you come in and you are trying to get an ID card or registering to vote, you have to prove your citizenship, especially voting in federal elections. That's already a rule. The Republicans are doing this because they think people don't know this. That's it. It does nothing. It's nothing more than window dressing. And the reason Trump couldn't get the wall is because he couldn't get funding. That was the point. He was asking Republicans for money that didn't exist because we remember during his campaign, we weren't supposed to pay for it. Mexico was. His promise was free wall. Then when he came into office, whoops, not free wall. I need to get money.
Billy,
and the Republicans went, where's the money?
Wait. Mexico did pay for the,
no, they didn't.
Yes, they did.
Oh, they didn't.
That's one thing I did look up.
When
did
the check come? Where did the check come? When did the check come from? Who did it come from? Where's the money?
They provided all those. It was 20-something thousand of the soldiers that they were paying to keep those illegals in Mexico. They paid for it. Mexico paid for it.
But hey, did Donald Trump promise that the Mexican military was going to do something? No, he promised that Mexico was going to pay for a wall. No wall, and no check from Mexico. Yes, he never could get the money from Mexico. It was a stupid promise. But he did from other
sources, and he did do a large portion of that wall.
He did not do a large portion of the wall.
He did too.
No, he didn't. He repaired stuff that was
a heck of a lot of it.
Yes, he repaired a
heck of a lot of it, and then he still built some.
Mary, he built a very small, tiny bit. He did repair the stuff that was existing, and the reason he couldn't get it is because he had to take money. He took money out of the Defense Department in order to build the wall. That was the hiccup.
Because he couldn't get it through Congress.
Because he promised Mexico was going to get it. Why are we on the hook to pay for something he promised Mexico was going to pay for?
And by the way, we are straining the gnat while swallowing the camel because Kamala Harris and Joe Biden were very happy to just not try to enforce the border at all.
But it wasn't Republicans.
Technically, did Donald Trump get that funding, not funding, to build the wall? We're straining the gnat.
But he stood up and said that Mexico's going to pay for it. Then when he came to Congress, both people in his party and Democrats said, don't come to us looking to pay for something you promised somebody else was going to pay for. He couldn't live up to his promise. If he could have gotten the check from Mexico, he could have built it.
When he couldn't get his own support team. And also,
he couldn't get the money from Mexico. He couldn't, and it never was a possibility. He never had a mechanism to get money from Mexico. He stood there and lied in front of America for months in front of us.
He did his best
yes, he
to
did.
Be able to
there was no mechanism to get money from Mexico ever. I know it does. When he promised, Mary, it does.
A good example.
He promised to get the money from Mexico, and he never had an ability. He never had an ability.
Mary, final word goes to Mary. Go ahead.
A good example is the words mean something. Even on your own broadcast this morning, on the news before it just came on, I found it interesting that the comment was that the woman was saying that former President Trump had, in other words, his assassination was by his ear. Instead of said, no, that assassination just missed his head. And then the last thing is, Joe talked about 20% of Black people would probably vote for, Trump. And you disagreed, Billy.
Yeah, I did.
And I have to agree that it's the same thing. And kind of Monica addressed it too. I'm not for Trump as the person. That's one of the things that really frustrates me. I'm not a cultist. I'm about his policies. Yeah. That's why I support him. And I think once you start finding out Kamala is all of that, Black people are not stupid. You have a lot of veterans, etc., Black veterans. They're not going to want the policy of Kamala. It's not about race. It's
Great
about the
call.
policy.
I appreciate it. We're just out of
Interesting point.
time.
We'll see how it
Thank you
goes.
so much,
Thank you,
Mary.
Mary.
Always good to hear from you. Look, I want to talk to you about my friends at Mountain High Appliance. They've cooked up some tasty deals for your kitchen. Now, for a limited time, receive up to a $3,000 rebate with the purchase of qualifying GE Cafe appliances. Enjoy the Mountain High Appliance price match guarantee and their special financing options. Visit one of their 4 locations for all the details and upgrade your kitchen with GE Cafe appliances in Denver at East 64th, Littleton, Louisville, and Glenwood Springs. Mountain High Appliance, experience the difference. We'll continue with You Choose the News. You're listening to the Jeff and Bill Show.
News Talk 710 KNUS.
Want to take your favorite radio station wherever you go? Now, there's an app for that. No matter where you are, stream your favorite shows. Tap the app to listen to podcasts, text message your favorite local hosts, call the show, get the latest headlines, and enter contests to win prizes. All in the palm of your hand. Available now for iOS and Android devices in the App Store or Google Play. And best of all, it's free. Download today.
I'm Billy. Let's do it. You choose the news.
Yes, it is that time of the morning where we get so very mixed up. Hope you appreciate the song reference. It is time for You Choose the News, everybody's favorite fake radio news game show. I have scoured the interwebs for mere moments this morning to find really dumb stories about us humans to play this fake radio news game after I give them even dumber headlines. Why? Nobody in charge has any idea we do something this ridiculous or frivolous this early in the morning. They don't wake up for about another 8 minutes, so we are on a clock. Shh. Do not tell them. All righty, here we go. Blake Olson, Jeff Hunt. Here are your choices this morning, sirs. Headline number 1, worst marketing job ever. Headline number 2, welcome to Worldwide Stadium. Headline number 3, creating super trees. Headline number 4, emo kids, big sad. Jeff, your choice.
Let's do the trees.
Yes, creating super trees. The science hippies are finding out that light pollution is helping us create super trees, and that may not be a benefit. They've been looking at light pollution in and around urban areas, and it does disrupt circadian rhythms, disrupts the ecosystems, but on plants, it's having some weird effects. It's turning them into, well, superheroes. The problem is when the street lights are on all the time, many of the trees and plants in the area are in an automatic defense mode because they don't have a day-night cycle. So this causes them to put up stronger walls and defenses, making them harder to eat, starving the local insects. Scientists are worried, saying in some areas where we actually do need the insects to be pollinators, we may be killing them by keeping on our streetlights 24 hours a day. So
this is the same reason why Alaska always grows like record pumpkins.
Yeah, exactly. So I just think it's interesting that the trees were defending themselves, and so it made them harder to eat. I'm just like, well, the insects got to get better at it. That's just me.
There's always,
exactly.
There's always something to scare you.
There is, I know.
Use your cell phone at a gas pump.
Exactly, and boom, and that was a bunch of crap. Okay. Oh, Blake Olson, your choice, sir. Worst marketing job ever. Welcome to Worldwide Stadium. Or emo kids, big sad.
Welcome to Worldwide Stadium.
You are my favorite. Yes. Welcome now if you are attending a game at Florida International University. They have a brand new 10-year sponsorship agreement. Can you feel this moment? Yes, we are talking about the sponsorship is now from Grammy winner, entrepreneur, Miami man worldwide, Pitbull. Yes, we're going to have the time of our lives at Pitbull Stadium at FIU. Yes, we are one when the FIU Panthers take the field. So glad they did this. Pitbull Stadium. I love it. I think that all of our stadiums should be named after comic book characters or celebrities, just in general. Yeah. I think it'd make it much more fun.
Former CU head coach is the head coach there.
Hey, that's fantastic. We're going to have to be Panthers fans.
And the field goes east and west. I don't like football fields that go east and west.
I don't either.
They have to go north and south.
Yeah, they do. Yeah. They really do. They do.
Kick into the sun.
Okay, last choice this morning, Mr. Hunt. Worst marketing job ever or emo kids big sad?
Emo.
Yes, the emo kids are big sad. We're traveling to El Paso, and El Paso Middle School has recently decided they have a policy that's going to ban students that are harming their mental health. It is all of that black clothing. Yes, they are worried about the mental health of their middle school students. They said, I'm sorry, you can't wear that slimming color anymore. No, it's all about those emo kids. Those people are listening to My Chemical Romance. No, you can no longer do this, and no more Manson fans. So yes, they have decided that
no more Steve Jobs fans.
Yeah, I know. I'm just like, they just decided, no, black clothing. That'll fix the kids. What? I just as if the person in your life that could be depressed or sad, you're like, how about you put on a happy t-shirt? That's not helping. Oh, well, but what are you going to do? All right, that's the end of You Choose the News. As always, Jeff and Blake are the big winners, and I'm a giant loser. Back to you, sir.
All right, when we come back in the 7 o'clock hour, Jessie Jane Duff, Veterans for Trump, Executive Director, is going to join us to talk about Tim Walz. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
News Talk 710 KNUS.
It is 7 a.m. in the Mile High City. Good morning, Denver, Colorado. You tuned into the Jeff and Bill Show on 710 KNUS. I'm your co-host, Jeff Hunt, along with Billy Thorpe, bringing you the freshest insights and hottest takes from the right, left, and center. It's a beautiful day in the greatest country in history, and we're gearing up for a whole nother morning of engaging discussions, critical analysis, and most importantly, your calls and texts, because this is where Denver's voice is heard loud and clear. So get another cup of coffee brewing, Denver, and let's dive into the issues that matter most to you right here, right now. Speaking of the last hour and issues to dive into, I'm going to be talking about Tim Walz's military service. What is he, a great hero and patriot for America, or stolen valor, as some are claiming? Well, maybe we'll cover this issue and more with Jessie Jane Duff. She's the Gunnery Sergeant and Executive Director of Veterans for Trump. Can't imagine talking to a better person to get their perspective about this. She's going to join us just after the news with Blake Olson. Speaking of that, good morning, Blake.
Hey, good morning, Jeff and Billy. 69 and sunny. Expecting a high of 95 today. The 7-10 5-day forecast coming up. Our top story.
All right, ready. Whoa, wait a minute. There, that's better.
Tim Walz is a radical leftist and changed the Minnesota flag. I used to love the Minnesota flag. You heard it right there. It's ugly now. He comes across as a middle-aged Midwesterner, former teacher, coach, but he's just a lefty in a suit. Bottom line, 9 out of 10 high school football coaches are great guys. He's the one who isn't. He's a DB, and I'm not talking about a defensive back, who wants tampons in boys' bathrooms, and he did that, who wants minors to be able to have sex changes without their parents knowing, and he did that. He signed legislation for both, set up a hotline to snitch on your neighbor during COVID. Yeah, but the Thompsons next door, they're not wearing their masks. Are you kidding me? And Walz hates Walz and Trump and makes us just stupid comments about how walls don't work.
He's not going to do anything. He talks about this wall. I always say, let me know how high it is. If it's 25 feet, then I'll invest in the 30-foot ladder factory. That's not how you stop.
Yeah. But fences do, like the one around your house. This dude helped create chaos in Minneapolis during the summer of hell during the George Floyd riots. Remember those? The mayor wanted the National Guard, and he wouldn't give it to the city until it was too late.
Large, peaceful protests focusing on the systemic changes that get to the heart of why we're in this situation. And when I say we, Minneapolis, St. Paul, the state of Minnesota, nationally, and as we've seen over the last 24 hours, internationally. A society that does not put equity and inclusion at the center of it is certainly going to eventually come to the places where we're at.
Minnesota was in that situation because of a huge lie by the left and a narrative that all the Marxists wanted to carry into the election in 2020. Bottom line, Tim Walz and Harris are perfect for each other.
To her credit, Kamala Harris and Tim Walz do make an interesting team, because if we remember the rioting in the summer of 2020, Tim Walz was the guy who let rioters burn down Minneapolis, and then Kamala Harris was the one who bailed the rioters out of jail. So there's an interesting team in that sense.
J.D. Vance is in Michigan today, and so is Harris and Walz, speaking to the United Auto Workers, but Harris still hasn't taken questions from the press. It's day 16. When will that happen? Don't hold your breath. Today, or she headed back to the basement. Worked for Biden. He received more votes than Obama when he did that. Fire crews continue to make progress in containing the Alexander Mountain Fire in Larimer County, which is now 83% contained. Fire officials say they don't expect the fire to grow any larger, and it'll likely continue to smolder within its perimeter for some time. The Gilpin County Sheriff's Office has arrested a man in connection with the death of his father. Investigators say the body of James Bittner was found in a tarp at Mirror Lake in Albany County, Wyoming, early last month. The investigation led to the arrest of his son, who's also named James. He faces a homicide charge in Colorado along with charges related to the improper disposal of a body in Wyoming. Former President Trump says that he'll take part in an interview with Elon Musk. Trump said the interview will take place Monday night. He added that more details will be announced later. The billionaire owner of X endorsed Trump following last month's assassination attempt. Remember that? Team USA men's basketball team demolishing Brazil 122-87 to advance to the semifinal round at the Paris Olympics. They take on Nikola Jokic and Serbia on Thursday. 64 in Castle Rock, 66 in North Glen, 69 in Denver. Bill and Jeff and Bill continue. It is Wednesday. Blake Olson, News Talk 710 KNUS.
One more hot day, then we're going to cool off. We'll hit the mid to upper 90s today. Afternoon and evening showers and thunderstorms, a good bet, lingering into tonight. Lows near 60, much cooler. Only low 70s with showers and thunderstorms likely Thursday and Thursday night. Highs will only be 70s with showers and thunderstorms Friday. 70s and low 80s for Saturday, more showers and storms. Weather sponsored by branchplanning.com. Secure your future retirement with a reliable income stream. Annuities can provide guaranteed payments, giving you peace of mind. Get your complimentary review at branchplanning.com or call 720-651-9800. Meteorologist Don Day in the 710 KNUS Weather Center.
All right, joining the Jeff and Bill show is Jessie Jane Duff. She's a Gunnery Sergeant and Executive Director of Veterans for Trump. She joined us during the RNC to give us some insight on what was happening there, and I'm so glad she can join us to give us her perspective on Tim Walz and the pick from Kamala Harris. Is this good for America, or is the Trump-Vance ticket the better way to go? Gunnery Sergeant, thanks so much for being on the Jeff and Bill show.
Yeah, morning.
Oh, super excited to be here. Thank you so much for this fabulous introduction. Thank you.
So yesterday, big announcement coming from Kamala Harris that Tim Walz is going to be her vice presidential pick. Your initial reactions?
Oh, gee, I can't say that on the air. It was like, wow. the mindset, WTH, I was like, you got to be kidding. But I was thrilled because nonetheless, it proved how extreme Kamala Harris is. It essentially demonstrates that her far left policies, she didn't want to have a moderate choice. She didn't want to have somebody that could pull her more center. No, she went with somebody who is literally probably as extreme, if not more so than hers. I have such a long list of defaultive decisions that this man as a governor has made, that it demonstrates that Kamala Harris wants extremism. I mean, she now can't run from her own record because she's only getting it reinforced by the guy that pretty much enforces her record. One of the issues that came out, and you had mentioned it in the teaser, was that he has lied about his military service. The sergeant majors of the National Guard out of Minnesota had essentially published a letter how he had claimed that he was the most senior enlisted to ever serve in the Congress. And essentially he had lied about his rank. He had been essentially appointed to be a sergeant major, but never completed the course. And once his unit was going to be deployed to Iraq, this is no joke. This is written in stone. He had decided that he would submit retirement papers so he could run for office. And he had essentially told his soldiers that he would deploy with them to Iraq. Then he no-showed, did not come back. He did not even show up for discharge. They had never seen anything like this before. And they had to sign the paperwork for him and reduce him in rank. So he did not retire as a sergeant major because he never completed the qualifications to be the sergeant major, and turned around and retired a master sergeant. So when he has been on stage and says he wanted to ban weapons that he used in war is a flagrant lie. He had never served in a combatant situation, let alone in a war. And not only that, he did not retire a sergeant major in the United States National Guard. So, that right there for veterans is horrifically disgusting. And many people may not fully grasp how severe this is to those who have served. I can only say that if your senior leader, a sergeant major at that point in his career, tells you he's going to be somewhere and the troops are expecting him to be somewhere and then he just no-shows, this is an astronomic failure to any unit cohesion, to morale, and all of those that are scared and worried about their spouses being left behind now have a leader that cowardly ducked away. And many, many Marines that I know personally sacrificed everything to go with their units. Many lost their families as a result, divorce. Many came back seriously injured. But to be told you cannot deploy with your unit was such a slap in the face for many Marines and soldiers, for that matter, that go into these heavy combatant situations. Their honor is based upon the fact that they wanted to be with their unit. It is a cohesion, a band of brothers. It is something that most civilians can never really relate to, maybe except outside of the police force, that you have each other's back. And so this has really exploded in Twitter world with the veterans that have told their own personal stories, many who have blasted him. So here we have J.D. Vance. Your question is, will we be better off with J.D. Vance and President Trump? I just would like to have the comparables side by side of J.D. Vance along with this governor. J.D. Vance volunteered to serve and go into combat. One fled from service and combat. That is really the actual fact of the matter. I want a leader that's fearless, and we already have seen with President Trump that he is fearless everywhere, from them trying to bankrupt him, to remove him from the ballots in several states, from taking him with these ridiculous charges that have been so exaggerated that they've had to do a Gumby twist to try to make felony charges out of things that have been normally, if at best, a misdemeanor with bookkeeping, but turn around and try to make things more extreme than what they are to keep him off of this ballot. Jack Smith, along with Fonnie Willis's case, along with Colangelo out of the Department of Justice, all three of those cases got launched, I kid you not, 3 days after Donald Trump announced for president. He was going to run for president on November 15th. Nathan Wade went to the White House for a meeting. Colangelo was appointed, went up from Department of Justice to go to New York to support the case up there with Alvin Bragg. And Jack Smith was appointed to become special counsel, which of course now has been thrown to the wolves because Judge Cannon has said he was not appointed by Congress. So this all happened 3 days after the announcement. So it was quite obvious that it was strategic and a launch by this White House to keep him, the Biden-Harris White House, mind you, to keep him from running for president.
Now, Gunnery Sergeant Jessie Jane Duff, the question about the critique that you just had for Tim Walz. Could we levy the same type of critique to Donald Trump, who avoided service with medical deferments, claiming bone spurs?
Oh, okay. So how are you going to argue that with Joe Biden?
No, because
Joe Biden's
not running.
Biden had 5 deferments.
But hang on. Sergeant.
No, but Joe Biden is your current president that the people...
No.
Okay, so he's not running.
Yeah.
But Donald Trump did not betray his troops.
Hang on
we're talking about, okay, let me answer you.
I need to refocus the question. Okay, fine, but I need to refocus it.
Would you like me to answer the question?
I would like you to.
Would you like me to answer the question?
Can you focus on
Would you like me to answer the question?
Can you please focus on the current candidates?
Would you like me to answer the question? Yes or no?
You didn't at first.
Yes.
Please attempt.
That's not what
Jessie
I asked
Jane,
you. Would you like me to answer the question?
I just gave you an answer.
Sir,
ahead,
would you like me to answer the question? Say yes or no. You can berate me and keep going about Joe Biden. We're talking about Donald Trump. Would you like me to answer the question? Yes or no, without a rebuttal?
I wasn't a Biden.
Thank you. Joe, yes, it is. You kind of filibustered your whole question there. But here we have, yes, you did. Donald Trump was never in service and betrayed his troops. He was never on active duty. He had never volunteered to serve. He was not serving over 20 some odd years on active duty, being directed to go do something. And I can tell you, almost every single one of us has known somebody, a relative of ours, I have 2 of them, as a matter of fact, who had deferments from going to Vietnam. So we can split hairs on deferments from going to Vietnam that medical doctors had decided was appropriate. Okay, we can split hairs on that, but I've got 2 brother-in-laws that did not serve in Vietnam for medical deferments. Okay, so many people have had medical deferments, but they did not betray their unit. They did not decide to relinquish their service. They did not tell their troops that they would show up and walk away. So I can give my brother-in-laws, I can give Donald Trump, and I can give Joe Biden the same thing because they received that from medical professionals. And that is legitimate. That is actually legitimate. I can't tell you, I was a United States Marine Corps. In the 20 years that I served as a recruiter for 3 years, and I saw many young men try to volunteer to serve and were no longer able to serve for things like flat feet. And many of them were devastated for it. So you want to criticize a bone spur. I do know for a fact that I've had Marines that could no longer serve because they had blood in their urine when they took their urinalysis and they were deferred from being able to serve. There are things that simple that keep people from serving. It is nothing to mock when people are told they cannot serve, because the military is not meant to be a medical rehabilitation service where if something is wrong with you, then if you come back maybe years later and the problem has resolved itself, then potentially you can serve, but that is permanently on their record, and many people cannot overcome the medical deferment that they've already received. You cannot join the military with childhood asthma. So you're going to nitpick over somebody's medical deferment? I guarantee every single one of us, most of the listeners, probably know somebody who got deferred from Vietnam for a medical reason, not because they ran from their troops.
Okay, Sergeant.
Talking with
the issue being that Donald Trump didn't show up at the recruiting office and get bounced out because of bone spurs. He sought that diagnosis beforehand. He sought the diagnosis beforehand.
So what? But he did not betray. I answered your question. If you want to berate this and go on and on about Donald Trump,
do I get to
Donald
answer
Trump
on my own
has
show
served
or
this
not?
country for over 4 years.
Fine.
I already answered your question.
I know, but I was
don't come on this
responding.
show to get berated. I do not come on this show to get berated. So if you want me to answer questions,
Fine.
I already answered your question.
If this is too difficult for you, I will be quiet. Fine, I'll be quiet. If this is too hard for you, I'm going to be quiet. It is too hard.
No,
it
it's
is much
not
too hard for you.
difficult for me at all.
Yes,
it is
is.
not difficult for me. You just want to berate somebody over the fact that Donald Trump didn't serve the country when he's already been president of the United States. We had less taxes. We did not have the high rate of inflation. You want to go back? You want to go back to Vietnam to degrade Donald Trump when he's already served as president? I'm not running the field. You just don't like the fact that he was an exceptional president. Nobody comes on this show to get berated by the host. You can filibuster me when I get off the air and tell all of your listeners that you don't appreciate me supporting Donald Trump. But I am the executive director of Veterans for Trump, and you already knew that when you booked me. And I can give you 5,000 reasons, and I can give you reasons in which Donald Trump was a successful president, and I don't think anybody's talking about Vietnam service right now.
Yeah,
because they know that their taxes were lower. They know that the inflation rate was lower. They know unemployment was lower because right now it's skyrocketing. They also know that, I'm talking about it. That's why I was invited on this show. And we also know that the inflation never skyrocketed to 9%. And for those who served in the military, they know that we are on the verge of how many wars right now. We have funneled money over to Iran, which was bankrupt under Joe Biden, which was bankrupt under President Trump. And now Joe Biden has enabled, the Biden-Harris administration has inflamed the world with what we're looking at of potential wars. That impacts, guess who? The military. But if you want to go back to Vietnam service, nobody's voting on that issue, and you know that. You know that. Nobody's going to vote on that issue. But somebody who decided to betray his troops recently.
I'm not saying a thing.
Hold on, let me reset here.
Guest, okay. And you want to come at me with an attack, and you think I'm not going to defend myself? I certainly shall.
She is a Marine. Jessie Jane Duff. She's a gunnery sergeant and executive director of Veterans for Trump. Jessie, this is the format of the show is a little bit like the old Hannity and Combs. So I'm the more conservative, and Billy's the more independent thinking.
Well, he's living in the past of Vietnam, of course. He wants to go back out there. So let's go after everybody who got a deferment from Vietnam.
So
but Walz service is in the past again.
That is such a weak argument. Such a weak argument.
Okay, you were the one that went back to Walz military service. I'm sorry that I followed you. I'm sorry that I followed your lead.
No, Walz.
For God forgive me for following the line
how
of
long
questioning.
ago? This is a current issue. I'm sorry. He did stolen valor. He's claimed that he retired as a sergeant major, which he did not do. That is called stolen valor. And Iraq was not decades ago. Iraq is something that J.D. Vance served in. I served during. And guess what else?
It is in the
Donald
past.
Trump was the commander-in-chief that helped evacuate these troops and made sure that we did not have endless wars. So, that is a current issue for most of Americans right now, because most of us remember where we were on 9/11. You want to quickly go back. You know what? You're kind of like snide. I wouldn't even call it Hannity and Combs, because you know what? Combs actually was kind of respectful. He wasn't somebody that made the sarcastic comebacks when somebody said something that he didn't like. Your attitude is to degrade the guests to make sure that they're caught into a hole of defending something that isn't even an issue for American voters. Why don't you talk about Donald Trump's record? Because you can't. because you can't.
Jesse, I do want to talk about. I want to talk
Donald
about
Trump's record.
Afghanistan and what happened under Biden's leadership in Afghanistan, which was one of the saddest days in American history when. Under his leadership, we withdrew from Afghanistan. You had the people running towards the planes, and then you had the explosion that took place and killed 13 service members. You saw the Gold Star families at the RNC. When veterans look at a commander-in-chief, how do they feel about the Biden-Harris presidency, especially in light of the Afghanistan withdrawal debacle?
The enlightenment for many veterans has been wickedly painful. I personally was impacted by that, watching that happen. One of the Marines that was killed was from my hometown, Sergeant Nicole G. So on the day of that withdrawal, when we saw that there was an abject failure by not just the Biden administration, but the military personnel that did not push back on this withdrawal, that was absolute chaos. It was destructive. It destroyed morale, cohesion. Many veterans started committing suicide. They saw escalation of suicide because those that had served in Iraq and in Afghanistan felt that it was such a failure of all of the service that they had provided and all that they had sacrificed to go and try to support the United States in this mission, and to see it just collapse like that and have the Taliban come right back and take charge was just horrific. On that day, there were 11 Marines killed, a Navy corpsman, and a soldier. And the corpsman's mother was on the radio within a few days after that death of her son. And she had commented that her son had said to her, "Mom, I'm going to be okay. The Marines here protect me." And I know that, having been a Marine, we just loved our corpsman. We called them Doc. And he was, I believe, 19 years old, maybe 20. And she said when she found out her son died, she was crying on the call, but she said, I believe he felt he had to go with them, because he was that close to those Marines, and he was killed in that explosion. We had a sniper that had testified in front of Congress that it was an abject failure of leadership that would not allow him to take out the suicide bomber. He had continually called it in to try to take the target. Was not allowed. His leadership was not allowed. They were not allowed to take him out. And long story short, we all know what happened. The suicide bomber had gone off, and they had the 13 dead, over 45 that were severely wounded, that many are permanently disabled. And this was just catastrophic. It was like watching Keystone Cops to see that withdrawal, how the Biden administration had rushed it. The Biden-Harris administration, let's include her because she did say she was the last person in the room. She did indicate that she supported this mission. And the fact was it was done so chaotically that it was an embarrassment to the great credit of the United States Marine Corps and that of the soldiers and the corpsmen that were there. Because the fact is that we know how to do this better than that. As I recall, there had been a date set, and then they backed it up several days because they wanted to try to rush out. We left billions and billions of dollars of equipment over there. I gave up an air base that could have been of strategic importance to the United States, particularly with our difficulties with China. And we saw how many Afghanis and how many Americans get left behind, let alone killed, trying to flee. It was tragic, tragic beyond means.
I think the last time we had you on the show was probably before those Gold Star families at the RNC. And I think that was one of the most powerful evenings. I'm sure you were there watching that when they were talking about the fact that Biden and Harris never even said their names.
Have never said their names, never met with them privately. Donald Trump has met those families several times. The first time he met with them for hours. Several hours. Just let them tell their stories. Let them talk. Let them grieve. Let them cry. He met them again when we launched the Coalition for Veterans and Military Families for Trump on Memorial Day weekend, and he met with them again and let them talk. And so they see the compassion of him. He has been known to be an exceptionally compassionate man towards those who have suffered. There are many people that have gotten checks after they've died. The child has been suffering massive illness, and they've ensured that they've been able to be taken to the right healthcare facility for their cancer treatments. Many of these stories go untold, but I know personally that there have been people that have been impacted by his kindness and generosity to them, and he does it very quietly. He does not advertise it. So, those who dislike Donald Trump often have never met Donald Trump or have never been close enough to him to see that side of him. They only go off of maybe the clips or what they want to see on MSNBC or whatever the left-wing media wants to promote. I've actually met Donald Trump, and he listens to every single person in that room. I briefed Donald Trump in the Roosevelt room. So I actually know for a fact that what he has done for this country has been from the heart of believing that what he has to do is so important for our great nation.
Talking with Jessie Jane Duff. She's a Gunnery Sergeant and Executive Director of Veterans for Trump. Jessie, I think what you're experiencing is what's going to be a central part of the next few months is Tim Walz's military service. How relevant is it? How important is it? How does it contrast with J.D. Vance? And I tell you, the Trump operation sure has a bulldog in the fight. You can give just as much as you can take. I appreciate you going back and forth with Billy, and the text messages are absolutely pouring in, and they appreciate you being as tough as you are. Jessie Jane, thanks so much for being on the Jeff and Bill Show.
Yeah,
well,
thanks.
Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you. Have a great day.
Hopefully you're more prepared next time. Good.
Oh, Billy, come on.
No. I asked her a question and she decided to. I knew that was
She
coming.
gave
though.
you just as good as you can take it.
Well, the thing is, she's a gunnery sergeant, and I know those people. And the issue is that unless she feels I outrank her, I'm wrong. My opinion doesn't matter.
That's not the truth.
Oh, yeah.
Come on.
Oh, no, that's exactly. No, that's the functional.
Nothing to do
that is
with
the functional.
Rank had nothing to do with that fight.
Okay, if we go back and you listen to that, she pulled rank. She said, "This is who I am, and I'm the executive director of so and so." She pulled rank. Yes, that's exactly it. Yes, it's exactly what happened. Yes, she didn't like answering the question, and she didn't want to have a conversation. And you heard her talk about coming on here and how you invited me on here as a guest. And fine, okay. And she wanted to come on here and make a speech. We allowed that last time. I pushed back on this one, and it was an easy question. It was a question she opened up on, and it was an easy question about Trump's past service. And she's the one that got mad at me because of the question.
I think I from her perspective, what I saw was somebody that felt like medical deferments being equated to what Tim Walz did shouldn't be equated.
Yeah, but
they're not the same thing.
But the narrative she's saying, there are some discrepancies in that. There are some things based on tinnitus and other things that Walz was talking about that would also impact his service at the time, and he might not be able to go. So the entirety of what she's talking about isn't the total truth. But the question is this that I'm trying to focus on. She's talking about the abandonment of the troops. She talked about the sacrifices. That was the thing she leaned into, was the sacrifices that all of these soldiers had to make, the time away from their families and friends that didn't come home and all that other stuff. There's somebody that had to go in Trump's place. There's someone else that had to make that sacrifice, that he allowed someone else's family to go through that. That was her critique of Walz. That's where I was going, was how can we do this? And she blew up. I'm sorry, this is a difficult question. I'm sorry that I ask difficult questions, and it's hard to answer sometimes. Okay. That's who I am. That's who this show is. And I'm sorry if the guests get on here and aren't prepared for it. Tough. Why do I have empathy for that? She had a difficulty dealing with someone like me. And that is an exact example why I could never be in the military. I couldn't do it because of that.
We've got text messages on either side of this. Jacqueline saying, even though she's in her 70s, she makes Jacqueline want to go out and enlist.
Well, she's great at her job. I bet she's fantastic. I'm not saying she's bad at her job.
She's saying, Billy, you met your match.
Yeah.
Andrew on the other side saying she couldn't handle the facts about Trump's military record while trying to berate Walz.
Yeah, and the thing for me is that, remember, I'm sticking to Trump and the military record. And what does she do? She starts dogpiling. She goes, oh, yeah, and what about, and what about, and what about, and what about, and what about? And she goes 3,000 feet away from the actual question I asked. I'm talking about Trump's military record, and she goes into Joe Biden, who's not running, and then she runs into a whole bunch of other economic policies, none of which I asked about. But what she was doing is flooding the field. She was just going to push as much information out there as possible so that I would not be able to respond to it. She was going to filibuster until it was over. Fine, fair enough. But she, again, came in and she admitted during the conversation she wasn't prepared for this. She couldn't do it.
Oh, man, so the text messages. No, she was prepared for it.
But she said she wasn't. She said she wasn't on our air. She said she wasn't prepared.
Brother.
She said she wasn't prepared for it. Sorry.
In.
Bet she'll be better next time. If there's a next time. Not on my deal. She'd have to agree to it. I don't care. I got no fear. I have no fear. You know that about me. I got no fear.
I don't know. I'm with the group that's saying we're trying to compare apples and oranges here, and that basically, I think she was right in the sense of comparing a medical deferment, which, and we're not in the military, Bill. And so when she talks about having family members that couldn't serve because of medical deferments, and then comparing that with a guy who withdrew once he knew he was going to Iraq, she took that pretty personally. All right, give us a call. What do you think? 303-696-1971. If you're considering selling your home, go with the team that is going to not only give you top-level service, but will also help you earn more from the sale of your home than any other agent. Gay Ribble has proven to get more for her sellers because they have ready buyers looking for a home in your area. They don't just make this claim, but they can sit down and actually show you a list of over 14,700 buyers. This gives you an immediate advantage. I'm sure you can hire any agent to sell your home, but isn't it all about how much you're going to put in your pocket after closing? The Empower Home team specializes in making sure you make the most amount of money. They will sell your home at your price, or Gay will buy it guaranteed. Reach out to my friends and realtors at Gay Ribble and the Empower Home team of Keller Williams. Call 833-301-SOLD. That's 833-301-SOLD, or go to gayhasthebuyers.com. That's GAYE hasthebuyers.com. All right. I can't keep up with the text message. Let's rename the show The Cage Match.
That would be fun. And on brand. Yeah, we should probably break, though.
Yeah, we'll get to your text messages. You're listening to the Jeff and Bill Show.
News Talk 710 KNUS.
Want to take your favorite radio station wherever you go? Now, there's an app for that. No matter where you are, stream your favorite shows. Tap the app to listen to podcasts, text message your favorite local hosts, call the show, get the latest headlines, and enter contests to win prizes. All in the palm of your hand. Available now for iOS and Android devices in the App Store or Google Play. And best of all, it's free. Download today.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. My goodness, that'll make this social webs, silly boy. Lots of text messages coming in. What's that?
Doing my part.
All right, let's go to the phones. Who do we got on the phones there, Bill?
We've got Steve. We're going to talk to Steve. Yeah, morning, Steve.
All right, Steve, you're on the Jeff and Bill Show. Good morning.
Jeff, welcome back.
Thank you.
Billy did a great job yesterday, and he shouldn't have taken this abuse this morning. But here's an interesting little fun fact. Over 16 years, Walz has run in 9 different elections, if you count a primary. And it would appear if he did that scandalous stolen valor issue, that would have appeared sometime. That's
yeah,
my
I think
point.
it has.
Yeah.
He had to address it. So in a previous campaign, he had to write a letter about it and address it. I don't know the electorate of his district or the state of Minnesota. Maybe it wasn't such a big deal for them, but sometimes you get to the national stage and this stuff really blows up. I mean, look at John Kerry, right? John Kerry was elected multiple times from the state of Massachusetts, U.S. Senator, and then he got swift voted. Remember that?
I do remember that. Yes, I do.
So sometimes you get to that national level and all of a sudden the heat really gets turned up on you.
And unfortunately, Kerry was actually in Vietnam, and George W. did not make it over there.
Yep. And Kerry lost, though. I mean,
Yes,
I mean, it is. It's a component of a campaign. It's definitely a component of the campaign, and Kamala Harris is going to try to lead. And this is what's happening right now, where you have a guy that has 73% no name ID. So it's 73% of Americans have no idea who Tim Walz is. Everybody's racing to define him. And Republicans are going to try to point out these problems to try to blunt the fact that he served in the National Guard. So, Steve, I appreciate the call. Does this fire you up? I believe you're a Democrat. You've called in the past. Does Tim Walz get you excited about this race?
I like the choice. I like the choice. He's not a show horse like Shapiro. I mean, Shapiro has enormous talent. I think he'll definitely run for president. But I think Walz was an excellent choice because it's, more working. So I think it was a very good move. I think Harris has an excellent chance of winning this. I think the tide's turning here. So, be interesting how MAGA and the folks react as she keeps going. But so far, she's on top of her game. You see where President Trump came out with new nicknames for her.
Yeah, he's been workshopping a number of them. Yeah, I'm not sure.
What has he been working on? What's the new one?
I don't know.
He's doing he's been doing Lion Kamala. He actually misspelled her name and is talking about Kamala stuff yesterday. And then the thing about
kombucha.
Then the thing about what was it? Walz yesterday was that he is going to unleash hell on earth, which I thought was actually entertaining. There was someone on social media that commented and said, "I'm not sure that's covered in the vice presidential responsibilities and duties." I don't think.
I will tell you the most effective messaging I've seen is Tampon Tim for mandating the tampons into the boys' bathrooms. That one is going to stick.
Yeah,
that one will stick.
It could, but is that a negative? Is it an overarching negative?
Dude, you think anybody outside of the hard left wants tampons, state covered, paid for tampons in men's bathrooms?
Here's the issue. If that's
what is the point of that?
I know,
especially middle school or high school.
Here's the better part. What's the harm? How does the school?
Have you
spin out
met
of
a middle school boy?
Oh no, I'm just looking what the harm is inside of it, and so that's what I'm curious about. Is if this is the worstest thing that Tim Walz has ever done. What's the
I've
harm?
never said it was the worstest thing, but it's going to stick with him. And to your average voter, it just shows this kind of progressiveness that's so wildly out of touch, where you're like, really? That's what you did with your time in government? You put tampons in men's bathrooms. Like it's just reeks of this kind of special, the special interest. That was the word I was looking for. It just reeks of this kind of special interest government stuff that doesn't actually help anybody's lives. Go ahead, Steve.
I wouldn't be on board with that. I think that's the wrong direction to go. That's something that's been out of control, almost like the Michael, you may not be old enough, Jeff, the caucus, the Pledge of Allegiance and the Willie Horton. You get one issue and just beat the heck out of it for the entire time.
Yeah.
No.
And I think, and Steve, thanks for the phone call. I do think that the thing about the bathroom is an issue, but I don't think it's necessarily the strongest voting issue that Republicans think it is, because there isn't necessarily, as I focused on, harm. You'd have to go after the things about what happened and him not getting National Guard involved in downtown during the Black Lives Matter protest. Now you have harm. That's a better line of attack.
Yeah.
The thing about the bathrooms, to me, I would leave that aside. I would mention that, absolutely. But the problem is the direct harm. Focus on bad choices. But again,
I'm going back to the names. I'm going back to the names.
Yeah. I get it.
Tampon Tim seems
I get it.
to stick for me.
Absolutely.
Look,
and we've got
pain.
Dwayne on the line too. So
We'll get to Dwayne in just a second. Pain from arthritis is just awful. Bone on bone, constant pain. It robs you of so much of the stuff you love to do, but there are effective ways to deal with that pain. And I'm not talking about drugs or surgery. Listen, there are exciting new cellular therapies that can get you lasting relief. And the place to go, QC Kinetics. QC Kinetics uses cutting-edge treatments that accelerate your own body's healing properties, revitalizing your joints so you can move again. And if you're living with chronic pain from arthritis or injury, you need to know that steroids and surgery and pain pills are no longer your only option. Learn how QC Kinetics can use advanced regenerative medicine to treat the pain, enhance your joints, restore your mobility, and give you long-term relief with no downtime. The local medical professionals at QC Kinetics are ready to help you get your life back with regenerative, restorative, cellular treatments for your achy joints. This is the future of medicine. Call for a free consultation now, 303-900-8986. That's 303-900-8986, with locations in Aurora, Superior, Colorado Springs, and Highlands Ranch. Also visit QCkinetics.com for more information. All right, Dwayne, you'll be up next. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
News Talk 710 KNUS.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. Let's head to the phones. Billy, you got Dwayne there?
Yeah.
Hello.
Hey, all right.
Hey,
Hi,
good morning,
guys.
Dwayne.
Yes, good morning, gentlemen. Billy, you may not see all the wounds yet, but that Marine Bulldog took you to task, and that's fine. May not agree with everything you always say, but you have to understand, brothers and sisters, once they're in that area, we always stay together forever. There's an old line from the Air Force that says, "There are no strangers, just friends, family we haven't met yet."
Oh, I understand. I understand that, and I get the dynamic, and I get the fact that when I asked a question that she didn't like, she was going to run over the top of me, because that's what gunnery sergeants do. Yes, that's what I told Jeff was going to happen. That's exactly what was going to happen in that discussion, that information. Yeah, sure, it was expected. It was exactly what I felt was going to happen there. And for me, I understand people going, "Oh, she really took it to you." If you go back and you listen to it, I tried to interject some things, and then she just ran over the top, and she just wanted to keep talking until I would just be quiet. She wasn't going to listen. So it wasn't about her wanting to have a conversation. Yeah, I know. Yeah, but it's not about having a conversation. She wanted to give a speech. That's right, and that's fine. And if she wants to come back here, and that's and I understand that's what she wants. Fine, I will be quiet. I won't say a single thing her entire segment. She can make whatever speech she wants, and I hope she feels happy about it. And if that's how it works, fine. I got another 3.5 hours on the air. Don't care.
Yep. Now, also with the Minnesota governor there putting tampons in the boys' bathroom, I thought funding was just so stressed that every nickel counts on a child's education.
That's a good
and
point.
To sit there and frivolously waste money in a situation where young teenage boys will be doing god-awful things with those increasingly very unique and exciting items, I find it to be very disappointing. And I will say one last thing. I have 4 brothers that took me back from the Guatemalan Goon Squad who didn't need to try and find me, but they did. And to this day, we still honor each other. So when you talk about honor, loyalty, and respect to just each other, that's one thing. But it's duty, honor, and country.
Oh, I get
and
it.
for those that haven't done it, don't understand it. But it's the thing that we have to get with at this point. Kamala and this guy, I love his line. "Oh, it's a 30-foot fence. Let's get 35-foot ladders."
Now,
what's his
Dwayne,
response then?
Yeah.
We had a car accident, so now we're going to sit there and get a bigger car?
Yeah, and Dwayne, and I understand the point that the gunnery sergeant was making, and the only reason I asked her about Trump is when she brought in the example of all the Marines and people that had to make sacrifices. When she leaned into that and asked about these people that were away from their family and people that didn't come home, we can ask the same question then about Trump. The idea of him leaving, and if she would have focused on the idea that he backed out, etc., but I needed to ask her about the idea of someone else having to make that sacrifice that Trump didn't. And I think that is a fair question. She didn't want to have that conversation, and then she accused me of berating her, and then proceeded to berate me. That's fine. That's okay, but cool.
I heard the clip, but you see, the problem is with Trump being at Wharton, he would have been in the front lines. He wouldn't even been in combat.
Absolutely.
He'd have been somewhere in an office doing paperwork.
Yeah.
So we can't find somebody who's a little bit less than to sit there and do those type things. Military deferments are out there. My father had a heart murmur, but he was able to get past. He served in World War II at 16. Was kicked out, came back into Korea when they were about to draft him. They did Vietnam.
I get it, Dwayne.
And then he died.
It's the argument that I have against Ted Nugent, why I dislike him as an artist right now, because he's wrapping himself in the flag and talking about how he's all pro-USA and got to support the military. Yet when his number was called, he stood in that draft line and shat himself in order to get out of service. That is unacceptable. That is absolutely unacceptable. Same thing. Yes. And so I agree with you. Yes, I agree with you, man.
Okay, but the thing is that, my dad died 77, deaf, blind. Agent Orange took him. He went from 220 being able to lift an engine block to 83 pounds and just absolutely horrid. It was one of those things. He still served with honor. He still got treated well and all the rest. The thing is that military families will sit there and see these things. We see sacrifice in a whole new way than everyone else.
Yeah.
It's a lot like radio in some ways, where it's 20 minutes of absolute boredom and then 15 to 20 seconds of absolute pure insanity. And if you can balance everything in between, you got a pretty good life on this all. But I say this again, is that when he made the comment there, Governor Walz, about getting a bigger ladder, it just shows me that he has no respect for the American style of life, no understanding of the Constitution. I look forward to seeing what happens November 6th, but I don't see a landslide, and that petrifies me.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think you're right. That's a good line of attack too, Dwayne.
Now, help me understand this, and we've got to wrap here in just a second, gentlemen. But we've talked about Trump. We've talked about Tim Walz. We've talked about J.D. Vance. and no conversation at all about Kamala Harris's military background, willingness to serve. She's the top of the ticket, the commander-in-chief.
Jeff, where you sit there is how many women have done. I graduated out in 77, and at the Air Force Academy, they were inducting ladies for the first time in all the different situations. And I saw girls coming back, and they were in their military blues. Saw Marine young ladies, saw Army young ladies, and Air Force cadets coming through. It was a whole new world when ladies were able to go to the institutions. Has it made a difference in the world? Yeah, I think it has. And there are some very qualified ladies who did things very well. But there was also a Navy pilot, female, who couldn't put the dang thing on the aircraft carrier, barely could put it on the ground, but they kept shoving her out there as a necessary item to show that the Navy had
I
female
just pointed
pilots.
out we are nitpicking and crawling over glass to explain those guys' decisions, but nothing with regards to Kamala Harris. All right, we'll continue this
thanks,
conversation. You're listening to the Jeff and Bill Show.
News Talk 710 KNUS.
It is 8 a.m. Gunnery Jeff and Bill Show, 710 KNUS, as we dive into Tim Walz's military record. My goodness. We're going to clip that and put that on social media, Billy.
Yeah. Well, if you were with us last hour, where were you? You missed some fun.
You remember that scene? In Mr. and Mrs. Smith?
Oh, yeah.
Where
we're
Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie.
Oh, yeah. It was good. And
they get into a little spousal tiff
Yes.
that involves every weapon you can imagine.
Yeah.
I really wish Billy and Jessie Jane Duff.
I wish we could have had a more productive conversation. Some's on me, some's on her. I'll take some of the responsibility on that. But I wish we could have just had a more productive give and take in the conversation. But well, we'll see what happens next time. And if it's better next time, I'll shut my pie hole. Yeah, she can come on here and talk to Jeff. That's fine too.
And the text messages are just on all sides of this, which is great.
I'm enjoying it. Yeah, and enjoying the interaction. I appreciate everybody taking the time to both listen and text us on that. That's, again, you may agree or disagree with what happened, but where else in Denver are you going to hear anything like that today? Where else? Nowhere. So again, get a helmet, get a seatbelt, strap in. Sometimes it's fun.
Well, you've tuned into the Jeff and Bill Show, News Talk 710 KNUS. I'm your co-host, Jeff Hunt, along with Bill Thorpe, bringing you the freshest insights and hottest takes from the right, left, and center. It's a beautiful day in the greatest country in history, and we're gearing up for a whole nother hour of engaging discussions, critical analysis, most importantly, your calls and texts, because this is where Denver's voice is heard loud and clear. So grab another cup of coffee, Denver, and let's dive into the issues that matter most to you right here, right now. Coming up after the news, we're going to talk with James Varney. He's a staff writer with Real Clear Politics. He's got a great piece out diving into the reckoning that's coming for K-12 as a result of sex abuse scandals, and you, the taxpayer, on the hook. This is something that I was always thinking about when I watched the sex scandals explode with the church, with Boy Scouts, with all those other groups going. But there's a way bigger elephant in the room than these organizations, and that's our public school systems. And what's going on there? Or do we have enough insight into what's happening with our government-run schools? And are they protecting the kids? Most importantly, he's got an incredible piece in Real Clear Politics diving into this. So James Varney, Real Clear Investigations, going to join us in just a second. Let's turn it over to the news with Blake Olson. Blake, how are you recovering from the last hour?
Well, you know what? I enjoyed it. I just wish, Billy would have gotten down there and given her 20 or something. I was looking for the chin ups and the, whatever else. But no, that was a great conversation. I thought it
makes me have a heck of a lot of respect for the Marines, man.
No doubt.
They take a challenge,
a great guest, man,
and just push right back at it, don't they?
Oh man, no doubt. No, it's amazing. Those guys are incredible, and she's really a great guest. Unbelievable. So, and Billy makes it great too. So thank you for the entertainment. I appreciate it. 75 and partly cloudy, expecting a high of 95 today. The 710 5-day forecast coming up. Our top story.
Donald Trump was never in service and betrayed his troops. He was never on active duty. He had never volunteered to serve. He was not serving over 20 some odd years on active duty, being directed to go do something.
Gunnery Sergeant Jessie Jane Duff, who's the executive director of veterans for former President Trump, on with Jeff and Billy last hour, and says that Democratic VP candidate Tim Walz betrayed his unit in the National Guard in Minnesota and said it's a case of stolen valor.
And he had essentially told his soldiers that he would deploy with them to Iraq. Then he no-showed, did not come back. He did not even show up for discharge. They had never seen anything like this before, and they had to sign the paperwork for him and reduce him in rank. So he did not retire as a sergeant major because he never completed the qualifications to be the sergeant major, and turned around and retired a master sergeant. So when he has been on stage and says he wanted to ban weapons that he used in war is a flagrant lie. He had never served in a combatant situation, let alone in a war. And not only that, he did not retire a sergeant major in the United States National Guard. So, that right there for veterans is horrifically disgusting, and many people may not fully grasp how severe this is to those who have served.
Walz is the radical leftist who signed legislation to put tampons in boys' bathrooms and give kids the ability to have sex changes without their parents' permission. Oh, that's nice. The former high school teacher and football coach, masquerading as a good old middle-aged Midwesterner, pushes the propaganda and tells LGBTQ whatever that conservatives don't want you to have freedom.
In Minnesota, we respect our neighbors and their personal choices that they make. Even if we wouldn't make the same choice for ourselves, there's a golden rule. Mind your own damn business.
Unless you're reporting your neighbors to authorities on the Walz hotline. Hey, the Olsons they're not wearing their masks and they're outside playing during COVID. Get over here. Yeah, he did that.
Excuse me, get lost.
Walz definitely has a severe case of TDS.
He doesn't have time for it because he's too busy serving himself. Again and again and again, Trump weakens our economy to strengthen his own hand.
And this is really funny. Nancy Pelosi, would you like another?
Tim Walz, I know very well. He served in the House. To characterize him as left is so unreal. It's just not what the question. He's right down the middle. He's a heartland of America Democrat.
Oh, the heartland. J.D. Vance is in Michigan today, and so is Harris and Walz, speaking to the United Auto Workers, but Harris still hasn't taken questions from the press. What's going on there? It's day 16. When will that happen? Today? Or she headed back to the basement? I think the latter. Fire crews continue to make progress in containing the Alexander Mountain fire in Larimer County, which is now 83% contained. Fire officials say they don't expect the fire to grow any larger, and it'll likely continue to smolder within its perimeter for some time. Canada, the UAE, Indonesia, and Australia are issuing travel and safety warnings to their citizens as riots take place in the UK. See what happens when you have open borders? Total chaos right now in the UK. Former President Trump says he'll take part in an interview with Elon Musk. Trump said the interview will take place Monday night. He added that more details will be announced later. The billionaire owner of X endorsed Trump following last month's assassination attempt that a lot of us, and especially the mainstream media, have forgotten all about. Rockies over the Mets 6-3 tonight at Coors at 6:40. Team USA men's basketball team over Brazil 122-87. That means they'll take on Nikola Jokic and Serbia in the semifinals coming up in the Paris Olympics. 72 in Highlands Ranch, 73 in Aurora, and 75 in Denver. Jeff and Bill continue Wednesday. Blake Olson, News Talk 710 KNUS.
One more hot day, then we're going to cool off. We'll hit the mid to upper 90s today. Afternoon and evening showers and thunderstorms, a good bet, lingering into tonight. Lows near 60, much cooler. Only low 70s with showers and thunderstorms likely Thursday and Thursday night. Highs will only be 70s with showers and thunderstorms Friday. 70s and low 80s for Saturday, more showers and storms. Weather sponsored by branchplanning.com. Secure your future retirement with a reliable income stream. Annuities can provide guaranteed payments, giving you peace of mind. Get your complimentary review at branchplanning.com or call 720-651-9800. Meteorologist Don Day in the 710 KNUS Weather Center.
Great piece and real clear investigations. The reckoning has come for K through 12 sex abuse, and you, the taxpayer, are on the hook. James Varney, who's an investigator with Real Clear Investigations, is looking into growing and massive amounts of money that local school districts and communities are having to pay as a result of sexual abuse that's taken place in schools, even going back into the 90s. He's got a great piece, again, as I mentioned, in Real Clear Investigations. James Varney joins the Jeff and Bill show. Thanks so much for being on the program, James.
Yeah, good morning.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
So let's give our audience an overview of what you have discovered and what you're writing about in Real Clear Investigations.
Okay, well, we were struck by reports that an editor of mine kept seeing in the newspaper about a teacher was having sex with a high school kid. Invariably, it's a tabloid kind of story and involves a woman and a male student. He said, what's going on here? Is this something new? Is this exploding now or what? So what struck us when I started to report it was that, one, it isn't mostly women doing this. And two, it's not a new thing. It's actually a much bigger problem than we realized. So we had a piece about 3 weeks ago talking about the extent of the problem, right? So the experts are saying something like 1 in 10 kids might be abused. And even if you think that that's okay, that's a high number, that would be 4.9 million kids a year. Even if you cut that by 50%, you're talking about potentially millions of victims. So we looked at that. And then we were looking at settlements and lawsuits, which, as you mentioned just a moment ago, have really exploded lately. And their settlements are coming in the tens of millions of dollars and the millions of dollars. These are the ones we know about. A lot of state legislatures have reopened the window in which people are able to file lawsuits, Child Protection Act and things like that. And so what's happened is all these cases are coming to court. And as we say, there's these millions of dollars in verdicts, which taxpayers are winding up paying one way or another. Either they got to pay part of the penalty, or you're seeing much higher insurance premiums and much higher legal bills and that kind of thing.
Now, one of the things that was intriguing to me was why it took this long to get here, right? I mean, we all remember the Boston Globe reporting on what happened within the church, and then the Boy Scouts. And so I think the American public is aware that this type of thing has been brewing. And because people weren't paying attention, or because of even more deceptive, deceivious ideas of kind of moving the priests around, that type of thing were taking place, that you think we would all be on heightened alert for this happening in our culture. But now it just seems to get to the point where, and James, I felt like this was something that was going to happen. I'm so glad you guys finally covered it. Why hasn't it been in the news, the scope of it, the extent of it, in the same way that the media targeted the Catholic Church or the Boy Scouts?
Yeah, that's a fair question. I can't really obviously speak for all the different media outlets. And I know that there is a strain of thought out there that the Catholic Church and the Boy Scouts were more tempting targets for most of the zeitgeist in the U.S. media. That may be. I think one of the things that's happening with the schools, which also happened with like the U.S. gymnasts and with the Catholic Church, is for some reason the victims weren't being believed. Right? You saw that especially with the gymnasts, the Dr. Nasser. Sandusky got away with this for years at Penn State. The same thing has happened here in the K-12 schools. These kids have been getting abused by guys for a long time, and they call it passing the trash. For one reason or another, the teachers are able to keep moving on, and there's more victims, and the day of justice or the day of reckoning that you're talking about gets delayed. And then, as I said a moment ago, what we're also seeing is because the state's legislatures in some cases have opened up new windows in which somebody can file a lawsuit, that has also created a bigger issue with the courts in it right now than we might have had several years ago. So both of those are factors, the courts and the time lag between when it gets reported.
And I think there's a number of reasons why the average American citizen should be deeply concerned about this. One is just the fact that many of us went to government-run schools, public schools, and remember what that was like. It's just even in Colorado, where you have a kind of a big homeschool community, you're looking at even combined homeschool charter schools, less than 10% of the student body is in those two. 90% are in government run schools. So you just have a sheer number of kids that could be facing these problems. But then secondly, while the Catholic Church may deal with its issues, or the Boy Scouts may have to declare bankruptcy, the taxpayers have to pay for these errors, right? These lawsuits, one you mentioned, I think was around $35 million. These are huge settlements that school districts and counties are going to have to pay out, right?
Yeah. And I think, what you just said there, Jeff, is exactly right. One, you got to send your kids to school, right? That's the law. They don't have to go to Catholic Church. They don't have to be in the Boy Scouts. So you've got a much, much bigger population here that could be potentially victimized than you have in those other cases. And so one of the things that you notice happening when you bring up the Boy Scouts and the Catholic Church and things like that, and I'm just losing my thread a little bit here, but is, like you said, the bankruptcy, right? And who's going to pay for this? Those are private organizations. These are public organizations. And because there's so many of them, there's about 17,000 school districts in the U.S. As I mentioned before, about 49 million students right now, K-12 in public schools. So no one's really been able to get their arms around this. It's so big. I think that's one of the reasons you haven't seen more reporting on it. You do see isolated cases here and there reporting. Newsday, for example, had a really good thing this year where they looked at it, and school districts there are facing $88 million in settlements for this sexual abuse that happened in the public schools there. In one case, the taxpayers had to vote to liquefy a $7.7 million capital fund, which would have gone to schools and maybe better fields and better classrooms, who knows? But anyway, that had to go to pay the lawyers and all. So it's something that so many people are confronting in the U.S. because of public education being so big and because education is required. And it's something that I think the zeitgeist of the people right now seems to be, because of the Catholic Church, because of the Boy Scouts, because of the gymnasts, it has really turned, and judges and juries are handing out some really big penalties that sometimes the insurers cover, but sometimes they don't.
We're talking with James Varney. He's with Real Clear Investigations, got a piece out about growing sex scandals happening in our nation's schools. How big of a problem are the unions in protecting teachers from being exposed, for lack of a better word, of what they're doing to these kids?
Yeah, that's a good question. And it's the next piece that we're going to be looking at. The unions are part of the problem, right? So one of the things you see when the advocacy groups talk about passing the trash, which means one teacher or an administrator or a bus driver or a coach goes from one school where there might have been some flags raised or some smoke, and then he goes to another. Sometimes the teachers' unions contracts prohibit the school where the guy was from telling other people what happened, right? Like, let's say the teacher resigns and he leaves, that will short circuit the investigation that might have started there. There's no findings. There's never been an arrest. There's never been a conviction. So when the new school looks to hire the guy, there really isn't a record there that shows them anything. And then it may be that the teachers union contract prohibits the other school from releasing what might be, let's say, incomplete information. Now, another thing that you got, I mean, it isn't only the unions. Another thing that I learned was there are administrative groups, lobbying groups for administrators. They sometimes also carry a lot of political clout, like the unions do in state capitals. Because remember, this is a state-by-state thing, public education, that's really dealing with this. And I was surprised to find out that when in Oklahoma, which right near you guys in your audience, they were looking into this. They wanted to pass some laws, and you would think that's a surefire political winner, right? I mean, you're trying to protect kids. You would think parents and voters, they would all be 100% behind this. But it turned out in Norman, which is, again, a deep red capital, supposedly, there was not a lot of political support for this because the lobbying groups for the school administrators were very powerful there, and they didn't want to get into this. So I think unions are one piece of the problem, but there are a number of factors that are contributing to this not getting taken care of at the root. And that's how you wind up with more victims and more schools.
Now, James Varney, staff writer, Real Clear Politics, joining Jeff and Bill live. I like the direction you went right there, Mr. Varney, because in my experience with family members and friends in the educational realm, there also is, when you talked about the administrators, there can be some very severe downward pressure on people that want to be whistleblowers about bad behavior going on in the schools. If the particular teacher that is molesting the child is hiding it from the administrator at the school, but is a buddy of the administrator, the teacher that raises the question ends up with consequences many, many times because of the relationship that's already built. And the last thing that an administrator wants inside of their school is to admit that one of the kids or one of the kids in their school is being molested by someone they are supervising. There is a real CYA here inside the educational system that is very, very dangerous. I think you've nailed this thing on the head.
Well, thanks. And you know, we've heard from a couple of teachers since we started publishing these stories. I spoke with one from Pennsylvania, not, you know, Philadelphia or Pittsburgh, but a much more rural area, who told me that in his career, there was a half a dozen times where administrators or teachers were coming into the system and other faculty members were kind of raising eyebrows about this. There might have been some rumors that trailed the guy. There may have been some smoke where he was before that they had heard about. And it really struck me that if it's happening there and you do see people more or less getting away with it there, you can imagine what it must be like in Denver or Philadelphia or New York or Los Angeles. My goodness, Los Angeles Unified School District has paid out more than $400 million in settlements for sexual misconduct by K-12 employees.
Oh, heck, in Denver here, we had a member. In Denver, we had a member of the school board that was accused of flirting with students. This is crazy. It's absolutely crazy.
Right. Well, hopefully it didn't get beyond the flirting and you caught it. You know, if you nip this in the bud,
well,
then obviously that would be a good thing. And maybe some additional training has to go on. But there's no question, you're right, that there is a CYA element to this that I think is probably not confined to the schools. I mean, we see this in every example that we're talking about that has dealt with a sexual misconduct scandal. There has been this CYA thing. And look, we all want to say we're brave, right? Like, we all want to think I would hide Anne Frank in my closet. And then the guy shows up with the gun. Now, that's obviously a more extreme case. But some of these guys are no doubt think they're doing the right thing. They think they're protecting the institution. They think that this is maybe one terrible thing that happened and there's thousands of kids there every year. But it just multiplies the problem and it just blossoms and gets worse because these guys don't stop. So I think you're absolutely right in what you say about the CYA, but I think you guys agree with me that that's something that we sort of have to break through if we're going to fix this.
I want to talk about one particular paragraph in your article. You write, the exposure of the nation's schools may be much greater, though the extent is unclear. News reports offer a steady stream of articles about teachers arrested for molesting students. Though those typically involve young, attractive female instructors and not men, which are more often the perpetrators. Then you write this. As Real Clear Investigations has previously reported, the Biden administration reversed Trump-era requirements that the Department of Education collect data on incidents of sexual misconduct. In the face of fierce criticism, the department backtracked and says that at present it has no data. I want to get clear on this. The Department of Education has no data with regards to sexual activities taking place between instructors and students?
That's what they told us. And so there's just a real quick history thing here. Under the Betsy DeVos, who was the Secretary of Education in the Trump administration, they tried to add questions in the Title IX questionnaire, which I guess goes out to these schools once every 2 years. And they asking about incidents of sexual misconduct by employees. The question had never been specific on that point before. So when you see reporting about sexual misconduct that might have occurred in K-12 in the past, some of that's student on student, some of that's others, it's everything. So they wanted to try and winnow it down so they would know how much of this involves employees and students. They finally got it on the Title IX questionnaire, but when they introduce these things into a questionnaire, invariably it's initially voluntary, and then it becomes compulsory as they go on. And of course, Trump lost the election in 2020. The first thing the Biden administration did, other than open the border, was strip these questions or move to strip these questions out of the Title IX questionnaire. And as you say, as you just read, there was a tremendous blowback against that. I think a lot of people were interested in this. So they agreed to put it back on the questionnaire. But now here we are in 2024, and it has never been asked completely to the 17,000 districts, and they have never had a compulsory answering of the question. So according to the DOE right now, they have no data. That's exactly what they told us.
Target with James Varney is with Real Clear Investigations. You got a piece out. The reckoning has come for K-12 sex abuse, and you, the taxpayer, on the hook. James, I'm not a big fan of the Department of Education. I wouldn't mind if it went away, but I'll be honest. If there's one thing they could do, seriously, if there's like one thing, is maybe collect some data on how schools are going, so there's at least a national clearinghouse. So at this point, we don't really have a national database on what's happening in these government-run schools with regards to perpetrators and students.
No, you're right. And in fact, that was one of the things that we were just talking about a moment ago that has prevented us from getting any reporting or a clear idea of this. It's because it is scattershot among the 17,000 districts. It isn't something that there is a national clearinghouse either on the legal standpoint. We asked a number of law firms and people like this, is there some place that just records every verdict or settlement that is made in this? And of course, they are public records, but nobody's sitting down and gathering the information for the 17,000. So that's why we said in our piece, what we were doing was taking media reports. There's some legal blogs out there, and you weed through that and you look at it. And the best we could come up with was at least 1.2 billion in the last few years. And that is obviously not a complete figure because there's a number of private settlements. There are private school settlements too. I mean, we're not talking about that because, as you pointed out, it pales in terms of its size to the public education slice of things. But there is nobody out there that has a list that can tell us exactly how many suits there's been and what the settlement tally is. So it's a little frustrating.
Well, and you've done some analysis as well as the percentage of victims by job title of alleged offenders. So just as we wrap here, I want to pivot a little bit to maybe what parents should be watching out for, what you learned here, and some practical advice we can maybe pass on to parents. You point out that the largest percentage with regards to job title of offenders are teachers, followed by coaches, substitute teachers, bus drivers, teachers aide, another school employee, security guards are down closer to the bottom, and then principals and counselors are really much lower with regards to percentage that you have found. Just in your research, what practical advice would you provide to parents to protect their kids?
Well, I think obviously listen to them, right? If what we see sometimes is allegations are brought and they maybe aren't initially believed, one of the things you find is, not always, but a lot of the time, the people that are doing this are very popular figures within the school community, right? They've paid a lot of attention to the kids. They've maybe given some special time and effort, either coaching or tutoring the kids. In retrospect, it looks like grooming, right? So I think there's a fine line between doing a great job as a teacher and being a bad guy, right? And if you're a parent, you need to be aware if that kind of attention is being paid to your kid, what exactly is happening. There's no reason to be suspicious of it, but it is something obviously you need to watch. And then I think another thing to do is, if you do think that if there is something going on, it looks like you can't just go to the school and ask the principal to handle it, because the record is rife with cases where the parents have done that and they're assured that the matter is going to be dealt with, and it isn't, or the person that's doing this just leaves, like we talked about, and goes somewhere else. So you have to be diligent and you have to stay upon it once the allegation comes up. You got to pay attention to what your kids' friends are doing, right? If they're telling stories, I mean, you see this presented sometimes to the public. It was on The Sopranos, right, where there was a coach that was doing this. Nobody wanted to believe it at first, but it was true. So I think that those are the indications. I'm not a child psychologist, but they tell me kids will often have behavioral changes if something like this is happening. So I think if you see all of a sudden your kid's doing a 180 and something's causing it. So try and find out. I don't want to make parents paranoid. I got 3 kids. They went to public schools, and they went to Catholic schools, the boys. So I didn't really worry about it. And I think most parents don't. But it is something that's happening. So you need to keep your guard up. And when something different or something radical happens, make sure you know what caused it. And if this is what caused it, then push hard.
And I think, too, you've got to just have those honest conversations with your kids about things that are just totally out of bounds. If this ever happens to you, you're in a place where you're not wearing clothes and you're around a coach or a teacher or something like that, that should never, ever happen. And so, be very honest and set those standards early on in your kids' lives. But James Varney, go ahead, please.
Those standards should include social media. Right.
Yes.
I mean,
right.
What's happening now is the boundaries are getting blurred. It's much easier for these bad actors to get in touch and contact the kids. So, for example, Oklahoma again just passed a law that went into effect July 1st, that any communication between school and students has to go on platforms the school controls and owns. If a teacher's talking to your kid privately on Facebook, that might be a little fishy. I mean, I remember when I went to high school, if the teacher called me at home, that would have been weird.
Right. That's right.
Right. But I don't know, maybe now it isn't, but it's still, that's the kind of thing that you got to be on top of if you're a parent.
James Varney, an investigative reporter with Real Clear Investigations, absolutely fantastic piece diving into growing K through 12 sexual abuse scandals that are happening and all the money that taxpayers are going to be on the hook for this. I mean, this is a huge issue in this country that we've got to be monitoring just because of the sheer amount of our kids in these schools and the amount of money that taxpayers could be paying. And unfortunately, the Department of Education is not doing this. Real Clear Investigations is. I'm going to put a link to this on my X account, x.com/Jeff Hunt, if you want to read it. But really fantastic reporting. Thank you for taking time to be on the Jeff and Bill show and raising such an important issue.
Yeah,
with
thank
us,
you so
James.
much, sir. And we are going to put a link in the podcast as well for everybody, so it'll be distributed through social media. Thank you for doing the hard work.
Sure. Thanks for having me.
All right. I want to talk to you all about my friends over at Advanced Hair Restoration. As you know, the Jeff and Bill show is the top talk radio show in Denver, according to our friends over at Westward. Well, Advanced Hair, similarly, is the top hair restoration company, according to Westward as well. So you know they're doing a great job. Look, everyone always asks, what makes Advanced Hair Restoration different? Allow me to share with you some of their details and remind you of their once-a-year summer savings event. First off, Advanced Hair stands by the results, and their before and afters are second to none. With Advanced Hair, your own natural hair is guaranteed to grow. Secondly, Advanced Hair combines top-rated physicians with modern technology, creating a concierge quality experience that's hard to find elsewhere. Finally, Advanced Hair's Advance, FUE, begins regrowing your own natural hair the very next day. It's quick, it's simple, and it's easy. Now, if you have a flexible schedule this summer and you've been waiting for that special savings opportunity, it's here. Advanced Hair's summer savings event will get you the most hair for your dollar. It's their best offer ever. For details and to schedule your free consultation, call 720-459-HAIR. One-day treatment, life-changing results. Your new hair is guaranteed to grow. Before and afters can be seen at advancedhair.com. That's 720-459-HAIR or advancedhair.com. All right, we'll continue. You're listening to the Jeff and Bill Show.
News Talk 710 KNUS.
Well, it's a song that you shouldn't play on a Wednesday.
know we
I'm
shouldn't.
sorry. This is just makes Friday feel that further away.
It does. It's not fair. It reminds you it's Wednesday, and I got to share off air. I just started playing in the background. I said to Jeff, I'm like, "Oh, it's our song," because we both like it. I'm like, "Wait, we can't say that. That's odd." So this is definitely not our song. Just saying. I love the song.
Great conversation. We just wrapped up with James Varney with Real Clear Investigations. He's got a piece on the reckoning has come for K-12 sex abuse and you, the taxpayer, on the hook. This article dives into the fact that basically because of the size of government-run education, and you remember the scandals with the Boy Scouts, with the church, with women's gymnastics, this has been coming and it hasn't been covered. And because of the amount, like in Colorado, if you add all the private school kids, you add all the homeschool kids and the charter school kids, they're less than 10%. So 90% of kids are in government-run schools. And so when you look at the amount of those kids and the possibility of abuse, sexual abuse taking place among teachers, coaches, and then you expand that out across the nation, and the fact that the church and Boy Scouts are all private entities. So if they go bankrupt, well, that's on them. They made the mistakes. They've got to pay for it. But with schools, government-run schools, it's taxpayers. And you hear this all the time from politicians. We don't have enough money for schools. We don't have enough money for schools. And Real Clear Investigations estimates that to this point, we've paid out $1.2 billion. LA Unified Schools, $400 million to these sexual abuse claims that are taking place. I mean, this is just a catastrophe.
Yeah.
And Bill, I guess I want to bring this up too, because when I talk to school administrators, and I used to work in schools, the smart ones have learned.
Yeah.
And I think this is really important for every parent out there, that if you end up, we all had popular teachers.
Yeah.
And this is not to say that all popular teachers are this way by any means. But when you end up with really popular youth pastors or teachers or any of those things, as a parent, you should put an extra eye on them.
Yeah,
because that's where you see some of the problems happening.
In You Choose the News, recent memory, we had Homeless Greg. Homeless Greg in Des Moines, who was basically this dude that was living in the woods and had set up kind of a homeless camp. And for at least 3 generations, teenagers had been going down there, and Homeless Greg was giving them cigarettes and alcohol. And turns out Homeless Greg is not Homeless Greg at all. He's actually a guy that's trying to avoid rape conviction that left a halfway house while he's serving time. So yeah, maybe you should ask some questions. And what I really appreciated in Mr. Varney's perspective was the number of kids and the amount of money. We are scraping pennies inside of schools right now. And a texter, to go back a little bit, texter recently had texted in talking about Tampon Tim and putting tampons into kids' bathrooms. And I'm like, what's the harm? They came back and like, but the money, couldn't we spend the money somewhere else? I'm like, oh, that's great. And that is a much smaller problem. This is a huge problem that is going to be taking money out of school districts that are struggling. And the problem is there is no incentive in the current system for the administrators to get the molesters out of the school. Because if they do, they open themselves up for critique and they open up the school district for a lawsuit. And that's the one thing that Mr. Varney was so eloquent in outlining, that the system right now is set up to protect the molesters, not the kids. We've got to have a conversation about this. This is crazy.
And there's no clearinghouse for this data. So you're stuck with these guys over at Real Clear Investigations trying to pull it all together. I mean, this would be a presidential level debate question, Bill.
Yes, it would.
About,
and are you surprised?
What are you going to do to address this, and how are you going to at least get the data on it?
Yeah, and I think if any time in your life where whatever you're concerned about, people that could be involved, you're like, no, we don't need to measure that. You need to measure it. A person that's a very smart administrator once told me, the checker gets what the checker checks.
That's
and
right.
It's a great phrase, meaning unless you're paying attention, you don't know what you're going to get. You're the quality control. And what we're seeing, what Mr. Varney outlined from Real Clear Politics, that our school systems do not want to be the checkers to figure out who's touching the kids. They don't even want the raw data to figure it out. That should scare everyone. Doesn't matter if you have a kid in the schools or not. That should just frighten you that they're not interested in figuring out where the pervs are. That's a problem.
I'm telling you, Billy, I was made fun of it in the news media in Colorado, but
Yeah.
I live like Mike Pence. I follow the Billy Graham rule,
Yep.
and that's probably a good thing in
Yes, it
the
is.
midst of all this. Just
Yes, it is.
keep it all away. All right, Billy, tell us about Balanced Well Space.
Yeah, Balanced Well Space. I was just over there yesterday, and I've got to tell you, you got to meet this team that has made an amazing difference in my life. You know, let's talk about sleep for a second. You know, you toss, you turn, you wake up in the morning, you don't feel good. That was my life for well over a decade. I never had a good night's sleep. This past Saturday, Friday into Saturday, 10 hours. 10 hours. I haven't done that since, well, I was out way too late drinking in college. But it's the last time. I wasn't used to long, uninterrupted sleep because I got a lot of things wrong with my body. We're not talking about my brain. That's for the text messages. We're talking about my bum shoulder. We're talking about discs in my back that are fusing together because of stupid stuff that I did. I've got a knee that's got torn meniscus. I have problems with ligaments. I've got, it's a long list. We don't want to do it now. Balance Well Space. Check them out, balancewellspace.com. They are the medical team that is making a remarkable difference in my life, taking away those aches, those pains. You've got neuropathy. What they can do is nothing short of a miracle. It is ridiculous the amount of mobility and how much of your life you can get back. I'm working with them on chiropractors, physical rehabilitation, wave therapy, regenerative care, trigger point injections. Got some trigger point injections in some ouchy places in my lower back yesterday. It was incredible. I was able to do not only another radio show, but I also went out and did bar trivia last night, and I didn't have the concerns or the constant dark ache in my lower back that I normally have after having to do those jobs and sitting in that position for so long. That's the difference they can make in your life. I used to toss and turn when I'm sleeping. My right shoulder, couldn't sleep on that side for more than 90 minutes. I couldn't on my back. If I would twist my hips slightly 10 degrees one way or the other, if I wasn't perfectly straight, I wake up the next morning and walk like I'm 90 for a while. It was awful. That's why I didn't sleep well. I'm getting 5, maybe 6 hours a night. Now I can get 8, 9, 10 this last weekend. That's unheard of. My wife couldn't believe it. She's like, you just kept sleeping. I want you to experience the same difference in your life that Balanced Well Space is making in mine. Balancewellspace.com, balancewellspace.com. Talk to Dr. Julie, Dr. Jess, B, Sarah, the entire team. They will do a custom evaluation of exactly what's wrong with you. You talk to them, they poke and prod, they take pictures, x-rays, stuff like that. They create a custom plan just for you. And the best part is they take care of you in the office. All the treatment, the big long list of stuff that I had earlier, they do that in the office. All you're doing is wandering from office to office to office to office. Everything's taken care of. Yesterday for me, 1 hour, 5 things done to me. That would have been hours and hours out of my week. I took an hour out of one day and it was fixed. It's just that easy. They're in Lowry, brand new offices right across the street from Hangar 2. It is so easy to find. Plenty of parking. If you can find Hangar 2, they're on the west side. So much parking and shade trees. Super important for a Colorado guy like me that doesn't like walking back to that hot car. Check them out, balancewellspace.com. Balancewellspace.com. Get a full night's sleep without the pain, just like I am right now. Balancewellspace.com. Back to you, Jeff.
All right, coming up in the 9 o'clock hour, Greg Lopez, Congressman from Congressional District 4, joins us. You're listening to the Jeff and Bill Show.
News Talk 710 KNUS.
Want to take your favorite radio station wherever you go? Now, there's an app for that. No matter where you are, stream your favorite shows. Tap the app to listen to podcasts, text message your favorite local hosts, call the show, get the latest headlines, and enter contests to win prizes. All in the palm of your hand. Available now for iOS and Android devices in the App Store or Google Play. And best of all, it's free. Download today.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. Let's get to the phone lines. Good morning. You're on the Jeff and Bill Show.
Hey, how are you?
Hey, guys, I just wanted to thank you for bringing that guy in. You know, I couldn't miss the opportunity to comment on what he's saying. And to me, it's a glaring contrast between who's taking responsibility. And I'm afraid our country and our government and the institutions of our government have grown so large that it's always kicking the can down the road. Somebody else will take care of it. Somebody else will do the responsibility. So the things that are not taken care of in the home by responsible parents are abdicated to the schools. And unfortunately, the government's answer is let's do a study first, and then let's throw money at it, and then let's form a gigantic department, which has been taken advantage of by, I would call them parasites all the way down the line of different people, you know, National Teachers Association, different people, and they allow for these kind of people that hurt kids who are entrusted to our school system, but it's become too big, and the lawyers play their role of, you know, people are afraid to do anything because they're afraid they're getting sued. So it really stops with the individual responsibility, who's willing to do something. This guy sounds like he's well aware of these things. So it's big government versus small government. And we got a little election coming up in November the 5th to see which path we're going to continue. And the more we take back.
Frank, to what we discussed before, this is, and if you missed the conversation, we're discussing about this growing scandal, K through 12 paying out $1.2 billion at this point, and even just in the last decade, to sex scandals taking place among teachers and students. It's getting worse. And this should be a question to both parties, in my opinion. What are you going to do about it? How are you going to track all this? I think that's important. Well, Frank, I appreciate the call. We're just out of time.
Yeah,
Greg
thanks.
Lopez is coming up next. You're listening to the Jeff and Bill Show.
News Talk 710 KNUS.
It is 9 a.m. in the Mile High City on this Wednesday, August 7th. Good morning, Denver, Colorado. You've tuned into the Jeff and Bill Show on 710 KNUS. I'm your co-host, Jeff Hunt, along with Bill Thorpe, who gets in fights with Marines, bringing you the freshest hot insights and hottest takes on the right, left, and center.
If we did get in a fight, she'd kick my ass.
Well, no, the funny thing is, and
she
you
would
and I have been
physically?
talking
Oh, God, she
off
beat me.
air, is like y'all would be a ton of fun in a bar. And the shots would just be flowing.
Oh, it would be.
You know?
Yeah, to sit down and have a conversation, she and I would have a lot of fun. But I'm telling you, you put Gunny and I in the squared circle right now, I'm getting whooped. I got no problem admitting that one. She will whoop me up and down. I have no problem admitting that. Yeah, that's a big tum-tum. I can't do this. Yes, absolutely. She'd kick my ass.
Well, it is a beautiful day in the greatest country in history, and we're gearing up for a whole nother hour of engaging discussions, critical analysis, and most importantly, your calls and texts, because this is where Denver's voice is heard loud and clear. So get another cup of coffee, Denver, and let's dive into the issues that matter most to you right here, right now. Coming up after the news, Greg Lopez, Congressman from Colorado's 4th Congressional District. By the way, he's a veteran too. United States Air Force. We're going to talk to him about this choice yesterday. Tim Walz, Kamala Harris's vice presidential pick. What did he think of that? What are the prospects of Colorado, maybe Congressional District 8, Congressional District 3? We'll get into all of this and more with Greg Lopez. You're not going to want to miss this conversation. Let's check in on the news with Blake Olson. Good morning, Blake.
Hey, Jeff, thank you very much. And Billy, I would pay to see that fight, no doubt.
I think my wife would pay to see that fight. She'd buy front row tickets.
That would definitely be worth
and
the
she would
price
be
of
wearing the
admission.
Gunny's t-shirt. And I would deserve it. Every punch.
That is awesome. 82 and partly cloudy. Expecting a high of 95 today. The 7-10 5-day forecast coming up. Our top story.
She was even to the left of Bernie Sanders. She was a co-sponsor of the Green New Energy deal. You know, she wants
open borders, and that's the great Ben Carson talking Kamala. Former President Trump says he plans to debate Harris in the near future. In an interview with Fox and Friends, Trump suggested that he and Harris could soon reach an agreement. He said it'll be announced fairly soon, adding he would like Fox News to host the event. She and her running mate, she has a running mate now, and he walks around like he's a happy-go-lucky, middle-aged Heartland insurance salesman, but he's one of the most radical politicians in the country, from tampons in the boys' bathroom to sex changes for kids without their parents knowing. Tim Walz checks all the boxes for the communists. I mean, Marxists. I mean, socialists. I mean, people who want to destroy America with open borders, high crime, and chaos for all.
To her credit, Kamala Harris and Tim Walz do make an interesting team, because if we remember the rioting in the summer of 2020, Tim Walz was the guy who let rioters burn down Minneapolis, and then Kamala Harris was the one who bailed the rioters out of jail. So there's an interesting team in that sense.
The list of destruction led by Walz is endless. Minneapolis almost burned to the ground in 2020 because he didn't send the National Guard in for nearly 5 days, as J.D. Vance talked about. He even changed the Minnesota state flag to something that looked like, I don't know, another country. Ugly. Then he live streamed it to everyone.
All right, ready. Whoa, wait a minute. There, that's better.
No, it isn't. Gunnery Sergeant Jessie Jane Duff, who's the executive director of veterans for former President Trump, on with Jeff and Billy this morning, as we just discussed. He says that Walz betrayed his unit in the National Guard in Minnesota and said it's a case of stolen valor.
And he had essentially told his soldiers that he would deploy with them to Iraq. Then he no-showed, did not come back. He did not even show up for discharge. They had never seen anything like this before, and they had to sign the paperwork for him and reduce him in rank. So he did not retire as a sergeant major because he never completed the qualifications to be the sergeant major, and turned around and retired a master sergeant.
His wife is ridiculous also. Do the crime and pay the time, correct?
I think it takes a lot of imagination and courage to move away from a system that punishes people and sets people up for failure to a system that is restorative, right? That is equitable, that is healing. How many chances do you get? My answer to that is as many chances as you need. My answer to that is as many chances as you need, which doesn't really please those law and order people.
Really? No doubt. I wonder why. J.D. Vance is in Michigan today, and so is Harris and Walz, speaking to the United Auto Workers.
Hey, Blake,
Yes.
real quick on that. I just want to take a moment and think back to my childhood and my mother never acting like that. You know, the kids whose moms were like that as many times as it did. With my mom, who I know is listening because she listens to the show. She texts me throughout the show.
Yes.
It was one and done. It
That's
wasn't
right.
how many times do you need, it is how many times have I said it, and I said it once. That's enough for you to get in line. That right there is the reason we have so many full jails, because of parents
true.
like that who
That's right.
didn't actually discipline their kids and said,
Absolutely.
well, as many times as it takes for little Johnny to figure it out, then we'll just give him the space to do. No. It was one time, and if it wasn't one time, there was corporal punishment there.
Absolutely. And the magic word that evidently they never used, no. And that is the most important word as a parent. And you're right. That's why we have full prisons and jails. Another Colorado law aims to make the roads safer for motorcyclists. Senator Nick Hendrickson, prime sponsor of SB 79, an avid motorcyclist himself, explains the new lane filtering decision.
It is during controlled traffic situations at low speeds where a motorcyclist can filter between the lines of traffic.
As of today, they'll be allowed to ride between the lanes when traffic is at a standstill, as long as they don't top 15 miles an hour. All right, the Rockies over the Mets 6-3 tonight. They're back at it at Coors Field at 6:40. First pitch. 77 in Lafayette, 79 in Lone Tree, 82 in Denver. Jeff and Bill continue. It's Wednesday. Blake Olson, News Talk, 710 KNUS.
One more hot day, then we're going to cool off. We'll hit the mid to upper 90s today. Afternoon and evening showers and thunderstorms, a good bet. Lingering into tonight, lows near 60. Much cooler, only low 70s with showers and thunderstorms likely Thursday and Thursday night. Highs will only be 70s with showers and thunderstorms Friday. 70s and low 80s for Saturday, more showers and storms. Weather sponsored by branchplanning.com. Secure your future retirement with a reliable income stream. Annuities can provide guaranteed payments, giving you peace of mind. Get your complimentary review at branchplanning.com or call 720-651-9800. Meteorologist Don Day in the 710 KNUS Weather Center.
Well, joining us on the show is the Congressman from the 4th Congressional District, Greg Lopez. Greg, you're without one of your colleagues. Last night, Cori Bush, member of the squad, lost her primary and is looking for a new job right now. I'd like to get your first personal reaction to Cori Bush being forced out of her job in the House of Representatives.
Well, first of all, Jeff, it's great to be on you guys' show. And, I can tell you, look, people are starting to recognize the ill-advised policies of some of the officials that got elected. And you know what? Sooner or later, it's going to catch up with you, right? Sooner or later, everything you're saying, everything you're doing that's not representative of the people. And you have a political disconnect with your voters. And you believe that's what's more important, You know what's more important for them. It catches up. I'm not going to lose any sleep over her not being there. So, I'll continue to do what I do.
Now, Greg, what I also love about it is that the Jews just have had enough of this anti-Semitism taking place by the squad and the radical leftists, and they stepped up. And Greg, you and I talk about this all the time, is about Christians and pastors and how they don't step up, they don't engage. In this case, the Jews organized, they spent a lot of money, and they were like Cori Bush and that type of radical anti-Semitism, leftism. We saw with Tim Hernandez and Elizabeth Epps here in Colorado. They were done with it. They got engaged. They organized. They put money into it. And those types of lawmakers are gone. What's something that Christians could learn from how the Jews are getting the anti-Semites out?
Well, here's the thing, Jeff. I mean, these people actually utilize what our founding fathers always believed, right?
That's right.
Government by the people and for the people. So when the people rise up, when they gather and they have their voices heard in a unified manner, it means a lot. And they can actually decide who they're going to hire for a job and who they're going to fire. That's the whole idea of our elective process, is that the people can hire and fire if they get together and they unify, not only in their voices and going out in the streets and talking to people, but also raising money. It just shows that our founding fathers truly understood the power of the people, that the people ultimately have the power, and only will they be governed when they give the consent to be governed. And if they don't give that consent, sooner or later, they're going to rise up because they know what their freedoms are. They know that their voice is more powerful than one person. Doesn't matter what title they may hold. They can come together and they can overcome any type of oppression, any type of philosophy that goes against their values and their beliefs. And that's what we saw.
Amen. Greg Lopez, let's talk about Tim Walz. This is Vice President and now presidential candidate Kamala Harris's pick to be her new vice president if she's elected in November. What do you think of Tim Walz? Good choice? Or do you think Republicans should be happy with this? Or are there some concerns that this is now a stronger ticket?
No. Here's what I think. I think if the Republicans play it correctly, if they focus on the narrative, if they focus on what it is that is in front of the American people, and it's very simple to me, right? It's two choices, two different types of worldview, two types of different America. And I think what we're seeing now is that either you're going to have an America of Kamala Harris and Tim Walz that says, we, the elitists, know what's better for you. You little people don't matter. You guys don't get it. You guys just need to keep working. Go out there. We'll tell you how much we're going to take away from you. We'll tell you what you can, when you can eat, when you can't eat, all those types of things. Or are we going to maintain a republic, a true independent country that values freedom and liberty? And so this is really what it's about. It's two different worldviews. We will either stand up for our Constitution and make sure that that red, white, and blue continues to wave proudly across the sky, or we're going to find ourselves again in a land of tyranny and socialism where they believe that there is no way for anyone, and specifically the Black community or the Hispanic community. They're going to try to hold us down even worse because they don't want to see anybody have the opportunity to live that American dream unless they prescribe what the American dream should be all about.
Talking with Congressman Greg Lopez of Colorado's 4th Congressional District. Congressman, let's talk about Hispanic voters. It seems like the Tim Walz pick is to appeal to kind of Midwestern, blue-collar union workers. Democrats are making the argument that, he can win in more conservative districts. He did so in Congress. One, I have a question as to whether or not anybody's going to break off that's really blue collar, Midwestern Trump supporters now going to go, well, I'm going to go with Kamala Harris and San Francisco leadership. I'm not sure I see that, but how do Hispanics look at this entire situation? Hispanic voters, with Kamala Harris, Tim Walz, Donald Trump, and J.D. Vance. I know we have an Indian American, a Black American, and a number of white Americans in that mixture. But how do Hispanic Americans look at this upcoming election from your perspective?
Well, let me tell you, you know what? The Hispanic community as a whole, they look at and listen to the words that are coming out of these people's mouth. They look at their actions and their behavior. You know what? Actions speak louder than words. President Trump has proven that he knows how to engage with the Hispanic community. Last time he ran for president, he won Pueblo. He won Pueblo. Of all the counties, that was one of the counties that everybody believed was going to be a strong Democrat county because of the Hispanic population. But he was able to reach into them and talk to them and really connect with him. Kamala Harris can't do that. She doesn't have that personality. She can't connect with any voters. The only reason she got the nomination is because truly, when you look at it, you know, they need to have someone that they can dictate what they need to do. Clearly, her record shows that she's been a total failure, not only as a district attorney, but also at managing the border. You know, and then her pick for VP, I can tell you as a Hispanic American, I look at that individual, I listen to what he says, and he stands against everything that my family and my values of faith, family, and freedom, he stands against all of that. And I'm here to tell you that the Hispanic community is going to turn their backs on both Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, and they're going to go behind President Trump and J.D. Vance, because that is the type of America that the Hispanic community wants. And when we talk about the border, here I'm going to tell you that the Hispanic Americans, the voters, do not like the open border. They don't like what's going on in the border, just like anybody else doesn't like it either. So when they try to use, well, you know what, we're trying to help the Hispanic community, those are nothing but fallacies. They're trying to stretch the truth to fit their narrative. But the Hispanic community is a lot smarter than that. And I'm here to tell you, they're going to help get President Trump get reelected come November.
No, Greg, one of the things we were talking about earlier was Tampon Tim. And Tim's putting tampons in the boys' restrooms in high schools across Minnesota by signing a law that allowed that to happen. So, look, I did ministry for years in Hispanic communities. They're some of the most traditional family value oriented people out there. And one of the questions raised was, well, this is kind of a sideshow. It doesn't really affect anybody. The idea that he put tampons in boys' high school bathrooms across the state of Minnesota. I think it does send a message, particularly to more conservative voting bases, that he's just kind of out there. To use a term from the left, he's just kind of weird, right? That I can't imagine when I think about all the ministry years I spent with Hispanic families, that anyone was like, you know, that's something that should be happening in our schools. Tampons in boys' restrooms.
That's right. Look, he's got such a huge disconnect with the people. He's not grounded on any moral values. He's not grounded on anything that we as a Hispanic community or any Christians would hold that we believe is true. And so, you know, when he says that this is what he wants to do, he's trying to send a message, but it is backfiring because, you know what? Everybody understands that those types of products do not belong in a boys' restroom. Right. They don't belong there. And anybody who's trying to put them there, they're confused. They have no idea what they're talking about. You know, so it's interesting that he would even think that that's what America is all about.
Talking with Greg Lopez, Congressman from Colorado Congressional District 4. So give us a sense of how you're connecting with Lauren Boebert. Now, Lauren is going to be up next. She's the Republican nominee for your seat. You chose to just operate in a special election, so you're done in January and moving on to hopefully something maybe in the Trump administration if he's elected. But tell us about how you're working with Lauren Boebert's office, and does it look good for Lauren? Is she going to be the next Congresswoman from Congressional District 4?
Of course she is. Look, she's a hard worker. I've known Lauren way before she even ran for Congress. You know, I got to know her as she was running against Scott Tipton, in CD3. We all know, she's a fighter. She's got a strong personality. I've met with her. We've discussed how we're going to do the transition. We're going to look to co-sponsor some bills together while I'm there. She's going to co-sponsor some of my bills. I'm going to co-sponsor some of hers. Look, I told everybody, Jeff, that when I was running, that I was going to be a strategic partner, a partner whoever won the primary, because we have two voices that represent CD4, and we can be a strong, unified force. So that's what I'm doing, and I think it's going to be amazing when she takes over. I think ultimately, we're going to have Colorado slowly start turning red again. I can see it. I can feel it. I attended the biggest fundraiser for the Denver Hispanic Chamber of Commerce last Friday, called Sabor. There's about 8,000 Hispanics, very influential business owners, the producers and general managers of all the Telemundo, Univision, Otra Visión, all the newspapers, all the shakers and movers. And when I walked in, they saw me. They were so happy to see me. They know I'm a Republican, but here's what they were telling me, Jeff. Greg, we're ready. We're ready to shift. We're ready to have America come back to what it used to be. We don't like what's happening, not only here in Denver. We don't like what's happening here in Colorado. And we definitely don't like what's happening in the nation as it pertains to the border. So if the Republican Party can put out a very nice welcome mat to the Hispanic community, they will come. They are ready. They want to join us. And when I talk to them about our values and their values, they recognize very quickly, you know what, we're all conservatives. And so there's going to be an uprise within the Hispanic voters, and you watch what's going to happen. And Lauren is able to connect with that community. And so I'm helping Lauren. I'm going to help Jeff Hurd and CD3. I'm going to help Gabe Evans and CD8.
Yeah, let's talk about Gabe real
candidates
quick.
as I can.
Because, look, that's a strong Hispanic communities in Congressional District 8, which is the northern part of Denver. Yadira Caraveo currently occupies that. That has now been listed a toss-up by many analysts looking at the political levels on the ground of what's happening in Congressional District 8. So how does Gabe Evans win in that important
Gabe
district?
Evans just needs to go. Yeah. What he needs to do, in my humble opinion, right? He needs to go out there more aggressively within the Hispanic community, just engage with them. He doesn't need to convince them. He just needs to let them know how aligned he is with their values. Yes, he needs to talk about some of the issues, but more importantly, he needs to let them know that he truly cares about their families, cares about their children, cares about their quality of life, cares about their jobs, truly cares about their future. And I think he'll do that. I think Gabe will be able to connect with the Hispanic community. And I think when he does, he's going to definitely get elected as a new congressman from CD8. And like I said, I'm here to help him, and I'm going to do everything I can to mobilize the Hispanic community, mobilize them in a manner where they're voting their values. It's not about politics. It's not about an R or a D. It's vote your values and your morals and what you believe in, and they're going to vote more Republican than they do on the Democrat ticket.
Greg Lopez, Colorado Congressman, CD4, joining Jeff and Bill live. I want to follow up a little bit on that one with you, Greg. And you know me, we're friends. You know that sometimes I'm a problem child. And I want to talk to you about what you think the hurdles are for the GOP in that Hispanic outreach. Like you, I feel that Hispanic voters are an untapped resource for the GOP. However, I feel that the impression or that they give to many Hispanic voters about looking at them sideways and saying they're all illegals. There's always this thing we hear from voters about, oh, I'm driving by this parking lot. I saw a bunch of Hispanic people sitting out at the Home Depot. They're obviously illegals here trying to do crimey things or work here illegally. How do we overcome those speed bumps in order to bring Hispanic voters into the GOP tent where I think they would be very happy?
Look, I think that's a great question, and it's very simple. Look, you can tell when someone is truly supportive of our American values, that they really want to be a part of our society and contribute. I went to a nationalization ceremony a week ago. 23 individuals from 17 countries took a pledge that they would no longer support their homeland, that they would do whatever that was asked of them as an American to preserve our freedoms and our liberties, and that they would defend the American flag and make sure that, you know what, the American dream was always strong. They understand what it means to be an American. When it comes to the GOP, look, you know, for some reason, it seems that a lot of people are a little fearful, for lack of a better term, because they don't understand the Hispanic community. They overcomplicate it. Look, the Hispanic community is pretty simple. Look, we're hard workers. We don't like government to get in our way. We want to control our own destiny. We want to be able to provide for ourselves and our families. You know, and we're a community of pride. That means we take care of each other. And if you can go in there and ask them to, you know, what are the main things that you're concerned with? If you listen to them and ask for their advice and ask them to sit at the table with you, they will recognize that you truly care. So until we get a state party that doesn't give it lip service, but truly puts together a strategic plan to engage with the Hispanic community right now, all the way through the election cycle and beyond the election cycle, and let them know that, you know what, we will always be here, hand to hand, shoulder to shoulder, because our values are the same. I think there's some movement in that direction. I know I'm going to push hard. I've been doing that, you know, for the last 7 years, and it's starting to germinate the seeds I've been planting. People are so excited, even though they know I'm a Republican. Democrats at this Hispanic Chamber of Commerce event, like I said, were quietly coming to me and say, hey, you know, Greg, I'm so happy you got elected. I'm so happy that the Republican Party is now recognizing that the Hispanic community brings value to the table. Let me know what I can do to help you. Let me know what I can do to be a part of this movement. And then really, it's a golden opportunity for any party to take advantage of the need and the thirst of the Hispanic community to be heard and valued, because whoever does it the best is going to truly get elected in the future.
Talking with Greg Lopez, he's the congressman from Colorado's 4th congressional district. Greg, I want to pivot now to local politics. 2 ballot initiatives, one that would have prevented boys from competing in girls' high school sports in the state of Colorado, or K through 12 sports in the state of Colorado. And then another one that would have required teachers to notify parents if their kids are going through gender dysphoria or transing in school. They can't keep that from the parents. Both of those failed to collect enough signatures to get on the ballot. What do you think happened there?
Look, there's a couple of things that happened. I was very involved with it, Jeff, as you recall. Look, first of all, you know, the radical left constantly kept challenging the ruling that we were getting at the title board. They took us all the way to the Supreme Court, and they added another 30 to 45 days onto us waiting, which took away those times for us to gather the signatures. The other thing that I will tell people is, look, you know, this was truly a grassroots. We were not paying any circulators. We were not giving someone $2 a signature or $5 a signature. When you really analyze those initiatives that got into the ballot, you'll see that they're paying for the signatures. They're actually paying for every single signature. We're not going away. Protect Kids Colorado, trust me, I know those players, the people that are involved. They're going to regroup. They're going to bring it back, you know, and you'll see that it's going to be even a stronger movement next time. I believe we ran out of time. I believe that they delayed us longer than we had hoped that they would, but the momentum and the interest and the energy was there. Had we had another 30 days, I truly believe they would have had the signatures without having to pay anybody, all through volunteers. We just needed another 30 days, and those 2 initiatives would be on the ballot.
Well, and to bring it back to the very beginning part of our conversation, we're talking about how the Jews organized to get elected officials like Cori Bush out because they're just radical anti-Semites. They just weren't going to put up with it anymore. And I think that's a good, strong message to Christians out there that if you don't like the direction of your culture, you got to get in the game. They raised money, they organized, they put together systems, and they won and got Cori Bush out. That's what Christians need to be doing as well. Greg, one last question. Let's talk Dave Williams. The judge just lifted the temporary restraining order, which will allow those that want to get Dave Williams out of the chairman's office for the Colorado Republican Party to at least move ahead with their meeting. I don't know if it's going to be legal. Both sides have different opinions on that. One says that the meeting has followed the rules. It's completely legitimate. Others saying, representing the state party, saying, no, they have not followed the rules. From your perspective, is it time for Dave Williams to move on? Does the Colorado Republican Party need a new chairman?
Let me tell you this. Look, Dave's a good man. He's made a lot of unforced errors. I don't know exactly what he was thinking when he made the decisions that he made, but I think at this time, this close to an election, because of what we're trying to do to bring unity, I think it would serve Dave well as the state party, if he would step back, whether he resigns or says, look, I'm taking a leave of absence, or I'm going to work more closely. I'm not going to make individual decisions, unilateral decisions anymore. I want to be more collaborative and making sure that everybody understands why the party is moving forward. I think that's really what we need right now. And I would definitely urge Dave to truly reflect. What is your role as the chairman? Is your role to outshine everybody else, or is your role to make sure that Colorado elects strong Republican candidates, whether you like them or don't, that we are shifting the state to bring it back to being red again and being conservative? I think it's probably time for Dave to move on.
Yep. Greg Lopez, Congressman from Colorado's 4th Congressional District. Thanks so much for taking time to be on the Jeff and Bill Show today.
Thank you so much.
Hey, I loved it. Thank you guys. Anytime.
All right. Doing a fantastic job. You all know I'm a personal big fan of Greg Lopez and grateful that he's there in that seat and doing good work for the people of the district I live in. All right. I want to talk about also another good guy doing great work, Dan Caplis and Dan Caplis Law. I've known Dan for well over a decade. Dan is pro-life, pro-family, pro-America. This guy is with us on the values, and he supports this radio station. That matters because who you choose as a lawyer says a lot about you to everyone involved in the case. And, there's guys out there, the big billboards, kind of the ambulance chasers. That's going to send a message to the people in the case who you hire. Dan Caplis is the son of a police officer. He's a former seminarian who's dedicated the last 40 years of his life to helping people who were hurt in serious motor vehicle crashes. Dan is believed to be, listen to this, the only lawyer in Colorado history to win 5 straight multi-million-dollar verdicts in Colorado crash cases. And that means that Dan's not only a great guy on the values, he's a winner in the courtroom. Dan is believed to have won the largest truck crash verdict in Colorado history. He's trusted so much. He's the official law firm partner of the Denver Nuggets and the Colorado Avalanche, but he's not just reserved for the rich and wealthy. Dan Caplis Law is a serious firm for serious cases who accepts righteous injury cases on a percentage fee basis. What does that mean? We can represent good people from all walks of life without regard to ability to pay. So look, even if you're doing fine right now, why not put his phone number in your phone? He'd be my first call if I ever got hurt. Give him a call at 303-770-5551. Dan Caplis Law, 303-770-5551, or hit dancaplisLaw.com. That's Dan, CAPLIS law.com. We'll continue with the Jeff and Bill Show.
News Talk 710 KNUS.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. Let's get to the phone lines here. This is Denver News Talk. Listen to those other stations. They're going to give you a monologue. Not here. We want to hear your thoughts. Let's go to Frank. You're on the Jeff and Bill Show, News Talk 710, KNUS. Good morning, Frank.
Hey, Frank.
Good morning. Yeah, I just want to make a point. I'm looking at the U.S. Department of Veteran Affairs site. Very easy to get to. I have to click around. And this is called Verification Assistance Brief. It describes what is a veteran and what isn't. I was in the reserves for 9 years. I'm not a veteran. So I don't think this is just a matter of semantics. So when we hear a fellow like Walz was in the National Guard, which is like the reserves in this sense, if he was on active duty or injured while training, not on active duty, he is a veteran. If he's not ever been called up by the president, not by the governor, in the case of the National Guard, he's not a veteran.
Oh, that's interesting.
Huh.
I had no idea.
I've never heard that before. And so the definition you're saying that comes from the Veterans Affairs website is that you have to be in some form of active service at some point, called up by the president in order to be determined a veteran?
Yes.
Now that's interesting. Now, Frank, I want to walk down that path just a little bit because this has implications for how we look at both J.D. Vance and also Tim Walz. And given that definition, the question I have, do you think it's going to matter to the average voter? What I'm worried about is, while you are correct, the average voter won't care. What do you think?
Well, it depends if how influenced the average voter is. Now, if you're an average voter who's in the military, yeah, this could make a difference. If you don't care about the military, and many don't, and don't want to be informed, yeah, you're right. However, it's a talking point. So George Bush, the second, I believe, was in the reserves. I don't know if he was called up.
He was in the Texas National Guard, yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if he was ever on active duty. However, it was a big deal that he was some kind of fraud because the 6-year commitment was a little vague in how he finished up. So I think to answer your question, I think it's a matter of if you're looking for talking points or reason to tilt one way, it could make a difference. But we're so long away from the draft.
Yeah. Well, Frank, here's a question I got for you. This is something that's fascinating about where we are in American history right now. Okay. At least from my perspective, my first election ever was George W. Bush in 2000, right? That was the first time I was able to pull a lever. And Republicans at that point were strong supporters of what I'll call the military-industrial complex. George W. Bush, 9/11 takes place. We're going into Afghanistan, Iraq. We're going to take democracies to the rest of the world. And at this point, it seems like it's almost done a 180. Republicans have gotten a lot more, I don't want to say isolationist, but more weary of using our military, especially after 20 years in Afghanistan. And you look at the Democrats, it's Ukraine. Not that we're going to call up troops. They haven't said that, but it seems like they got pretty close to the line about that. They're willing to spend a lot of money into Ukraine. From your perspective as someone who was in the reserves, where do you think the military leans right now? Do you think they're gung-ho? They want to get behind a Kamala Harris, Tim Walz ticket because it's more engaged in international affairs? Or they kind of go in, we like Trump because maybe we don't want to be going out there fighting everybody else's fight?
Well, I don't really know how to answer that question. All I can say is that we're very influenced by the mass media. And the first thing I heard about Walz is he's a veteran, which he may be. So it's very important from that point of view that his credentials and Trump wasn't, or whatever. So to that extent, it kind of means more in the negative maybe than the positive. J.D. Vance was in the military. He is a veteran. However, we've heard already that, he never carried a gun or something. So, I mean, it's degrees.
Yeah.
But I thought I'd just put that together because I spent a lifetime. I went in when I was 24 in 64. The Vietnam War wasn't quite built up, and I was a draft dodger like the hundreds of thousands of people who did the same thing. They went in for 6 years. The reason I did is that I was in college and my deferments had run out and I didn't want to lose a semester. So in that sense, there are a lot of people in my position. Now, one of the things that I like to point out is that I do have friends who were in the reserves for their 6-year commitment and got injured. Artillery unit training, losing their hearing. They are considered to be veterans, and they can go to the VA. I can't go to the VA. So this
Frank,
is all very.
I really appreciate that information. Thank
That is
you for bringing
interesting.
that to our attention. Thanks for calling the show. All right, we'll
Yeah, thanks,
continue.
Frank.
You're listening to the Jeff and Bill Show.
News Talk 710 KNUS.
That's fine. Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. Let's go back to the phone lines. Jay, you're on the Jeff and Bill Show. Good morning.
Good morning.
Hey, good morning. I was going to tell Billy, I'm the medic on our team, so if he needs me to stop by Denver General Hospital and get some high coagulant plasma for him after that lashing.
Might need a cut man. Might need a cut man in the corner. I'll call you, Jay. I'm definitely going to need a cut
It'll
man.
stop the bleeding. I love you, Billy,
Yeah.
but you took it, and whether right or wrong, I'm not going to say that, but it was great.
It was fun. It was very fun.
How'd you like to be downwind when she's shooting some 155 millimeter cannon rounds at you?
Oh, there's
she
no
was
way.
fast.
Yeah, she was.
Ooh.
So
I
if
love
you
her.
missed it, in the 7 o'clock hour, Jessie Jane Duff, Executive Director of Veterans for Trump, joined us. And boy, did she and Billy get into it. Is Donald Trump a draft dodger? Is Tim Walz exaggerating his military record? Boy, oh boy.
Yeah, go back and listen. 7 o'clock. It was fun.
Spicy.
Yeah, and I appreciated it. It was great. And
Well,
she's going
and-
to come back because Jeff off air was managed to clean up my mess.
No,
Yeah.
it was fine. She had a lot of fun, and
great.
it was both got that it was it was spirited, but
Yeah,
we
not
got two
personal.
adults in
Yeah,
the room.
that's good.
Let me put it to you like this. She was on, as you know, semi-auto. She was on full automatic.
Oh yeah,
with a full clip.
she had an M60 and was just letting it roll.
Yeah.
She had a long feed and it was just going, and I took it. Yeah, she did a good job.
Yeah, but you both did well. I just wanted to say it was a great show. I love listening to her, and also the fact that there was a lot of people that go to war, and it's not fun, it's not funny, and all that stuff. But good job on the interview for her. And the last guy that just called in, the reserve folks love to be deployed or put in service, because once they immediately are accepted so they can go full time, and then they can get complete retirement. There's a whole bunch of complexions that change. I never was reserve, but the gentleman that brought that in brought some great points about the new person that's Kamala's boy or whatever he is.
That's interesting, and I'm curious how it can be advantaged tactically. What do you do? And Jay, thanks for the call. How do you take advantage of the fact that he's National Guard and not full service? It's going to be a delicate line to cross, but I think there's some hay to be made there. I think there's some way that you can really create a messaging around who Tim Walz is or is not. Yeah.
Well, and it already seems like the Republicans are trying to swift boat him again. They're bringing in the guy that replaced him, that was the leader of the troops, and he's already getting out there on the stump talking about the problems with his service. So, oh boy, it is is definitely August of an election year, and the knives are out, my friends.
Yes, they are. Oh, they are.
Well, it's been an absolutely fantastic show. If you missed it, go to 710knus.com to download the podcast there. Cal Thomas is up next, followed by Charlie Kirk. You're not going to want to miss it. You've been listening to the Jeff and Bill Show.
News Talk 710 KNUS. Have a great day.